Yeah, he's good now.
Correct. Yeah, I'm pushing us to live and also making Kathy and Andrew co-hosts.
So we're ready to go?
We're good to go.
Okay, so I'm calling the advisory committee meeting to order at 7:35 p.m. on March 30th, 2022. So we've got a very, very busy night, so we're going to jump right in. As I said, our wonderful minute taker Claire has had an accident. She's here tonight though, but she's got the minutes drafted, but they're not ready for prime time yet. So we'll get to them next week. Okay. All right. So our first order of business is to welcome the Capital Investment Planning Committee. And let's see, it's Jason and Jeff and Karen. And I think that's it, right, Jason?
That is it. And we're still Capital Planning Committee until we have town meeting and get the Attorney General through this.
Sorry. I'm trying to get used to your new name because CPC is easier than CIPC to me. So I keep practicing, like Select Board, CIPC. Okay, so Jason, do you expect someone else?
Maybe I'll keep an eye out on the attendees because I can see it just in case we do hit a quorum or one away from a quorum. But okay, I think you should just proceed given what you have on your agenda.
Okay, so everyone knows our Capital Planning Committee. So I'm just going to turn it over to Jason so that we can wrap up our work with them for town meeting.
Thanks for having me. I actually don't have anything prepared for tonight. We're just really here to answer questions. I think in three areas. One, the capital items that we presented months ago that are now appearing in the warrant, just to make sure there's no questions or concerns with any of those before you take a vote on those. We also understand you have a differing opinion currently on the Regional School Stabilization Fund and the establishment of that. So I think we should talk about that. And then, as everyone's aware, there's also a citizens petition that has now come related to roads, which intertwined with a vote that we took on road maintenance. And we're happy to also talk about that. Those are the kind of three things I had top of mind, but really, Kathy, it's up to you and your committee what questions you have for us to answer anything before you take your official positions.
So that's exactly what's on my list, although I'm not sure we can make much progress with the citizen petition road article. We're not going to discuss that tonight. We will discuss that in April, but we're not ready for that one yet. But I also wanted you to just mention the article that is going to make your committee a standing committee. We've already reviewed it. I think we're fine with it, but if there's been any changes since we last met with you, let's talk about those to make sure, because we're going to vote on that one, I think, next week as far as our official vote.
That's easy. There hasn't been a change in months. And it was really the changes we articulated when we were here a couple months ago.
Okay, so there's been no change since we talked to you, so that one should be done then. Okay, so why don't we, either Andrew or I can pop up the screen. Why don't we pop up the list of capital so we can see what's on the list is to refresh our memory. You want to do it, Andrew?
Sure, I'll do it. I got some notes on it.
That's okay, unless they're.
Nope, nothing's bad.
You shouldn't see.
Hey, Kathy.
Yes.
I think Tom's here.
Okay. Eric, can you bring Tom over?
So Jason, I had some questions here. So if we want to start with that, we can.
Yeah.
So basically, I know we had talked about, I think with Brian, whether or not this extra 30,000 was going to be ambulance fund. I guess it's not really capital related, but I wasn't sure if you knew if that. Are we going to wait till April to get the March results? Okay, so that's on hold.
Yeah. And the main reason for that, just as an education, is we do actually spend a lot of time looking at the ambulance fund because it is funding, obviously, in addition to the general fund offset that it provides every year, it does fund a significant amount of capital, both debt and appropriation. The main difference this year is we actually have to have the funds in the account on the day of town meeting. So that's why Brian is, he's used the word been conservative. We think the 30,000 definitely would fit, but we have to see how the results go. The ambulance fund, just for everyone's benefit, is trending approximately, it's definitely north. If you do like an annual projection, $100,000 higher than we were expecting for the year, which is We were not anticipating this coming out of the ambulance fund. We were always had it slotted as general fund, so this is kind of a nice
Yeah.
offset.
Nice to have.
Hey,
Um,
Jason,
For a bad reason, but whatever.
sorry guys, just for my quick education, maybe some other of the newer folks, on average, what does that ambulance fund look like on an annual basis?
The current year budget was supposed to be about 475,000 in terms of revenue that it takes in. There is a little bit of trailing if you think about when you go to the doctor's office, it's very similar, right? By the time the insurance claim actually goes through and the payment comes in, it is trending in the 575 or higher range if you do kind of an annual projection.
Cool, thank you.
So it's my understanding from talking to Brian pretty recently is that, well, first of all, this rule that you've actually got to have the money in the bank, you know, the day before you actually say you're going to use it. We've never, that's kind of a new understanding. We used to think it just had to be there by July 1st, the start of the fiscal year. So it looks like it's got to be there at town meeting. And so I don't know how you know but I don't know how you know what's in that ambulance fund the day before, but I maybe we can figure it out.
It's going to be
Anyway,
a month off, Kathy, probably is my hunch. It's
so in
gonna be
other words,
more-
he's going to go back a month and know that he's being conservative because he's going to add money to it over the next month, I guess, right?
and that's my understanding.
Okay. And I think, and again, I say unfortunately it's trending this way because that means a lot of people use the ambulance, but it is trending higher. And I believe that he is relatively confident that that extra 30 is going to come out of the ambulance fund too, which will help as far as the tax levy. A little bit helps. So that's TBD in the next few weeks. Okay, so back to you, AP.
Yep. And again, anybody had any other questions, feel free to jump in. But the other one I had is ARPA. I think we heard that there might be another 50,000 need somewhere out there, but just
No
It's been
more, no
rescinded.
more, no more. So they're not asking for that. And of course, this 50 is not going to affect the tax levy because it's being funded by ARPA, which is totally outside the tax levy. You know, that's totally under the control of the select board, et cetera. So the second 50 that we'd heard about recently has been withdrawn.
okay.
Okay.
And the only other question I had is we had a bunch of conversations, mostly with the Recreation Commission or Recreation Director, about capital items, you know, being paid out of revolving funds. So I just was curious, while capital was here, what your thoughts were of kind of capital items coming out of a revolving fund versus coming out of a general fund, and you know, where should we be kind of budgeting for these things?
We honestly haven't had a spirited conversation about that. With the way we're currently constituted, I think, Andrew, last time we had a discussion about this was when there was an overage on the lighting project, and they came to us looking to spend money out of the revolving fund, but it hit the capital policy.
Yep.
This van certainly has been a placeholder. My understanding is the number is in flux because of obviously what we all know about what's going on with the auto market, but capital has not taken a position on the van yet because we don't have the right support. And Tim obviously is going to submit it when he's ready and has the right data. So I would probably punt that question, Andrew, until we have something like that live, but I'll take a note to, take a formal voter position on that when we do that.
Yep. And I think, go ahead, Kathy.
Just to be clear, those two items, again, are not being voted on at town meeting. So the only thing being voted on at town meeting is the green and the blue. So the orange or tan, whatever this number, the color is down there, those aren't being voted. So even if the number is 70 for the van, it's still coming out, supposed to come out of the rec revolving fund. It's not supposed to come out of the tax levy. So even if it's 70, it doesn't increase anything that we're doing as far as town meeting goes.
Yeah, but the one distinction, while I agree with everything you just said, Kathy, the one distinction we'll say is the school administration, for the first time, because of our capital policy, even though they're not bound by it, did come to capital and make a full presentation. And we did take a full vote of support for that was an appropriate use of their funds. It met the needs, and we thought it was an appropriate project. Versus rec, we just haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay, so I appreciate the distinction, and I think it's great that you're looking at both, because I think the answer to what Andrew just said, this is just one person's opinion, is that everything that's capital, no matter how it's funded, should be vetted by the capital planning committee, period. And then you can decide how to fund it, but you got to determine that you really need it first, and not look at it just because it happens to be coming out of a fund that doesn't run through the tax levy. Okay, so now can you scroll back, Andrew, to the top? Okay, so the green is what is going to, so you're going to see the 937 500 as far as what's on our Excel worksheet that we keep track of as far as what's going to determine the tax rate. So the 937.5 is there.
Where is it? Right here.
Yep, right there. Got it. Okay, so does anybody else? So I know, Adam, you had some questions about capital a couple of meetings ago, as far as this whole thing, as far as, who really vets, et cetera. So does Adam, or anyone else have any question on any specific item on here?
Are we prepared for the discussion about road maintenance?
No, not yet. We're going to have a meeting just to talk about it. So, okay, so exclude road maintenance, because that, there's a whole citizens petition article on road maintenance. That at least originally they wanted advisory to kind of take over that. So we've got a whole discussion on that one, Tim, after we voted on the budget. So right now we've got 400 in there, which is a pretty typical number in the annual road maintenance article.
Kathy, have you discussed the language that Capital suggested and the select board officially voted on to include in the warrant related to road maintenance? Because I think if not, I would like to spend a minute on that to lead up to your future conversation.
Well, see, Jason, that's why I thought you had changed the warrant article for that language, but it sounds like you haven't.
We have. We've changed. Whatever. I forget what number capital is in the ATM warrant. It's a one motion that includes all of these projects that you see on the screen that are listed as general or ambulance fund. Obviously, ARPA is not going to be subject to town meeting or reserve fund. Revolving funds. Underneath each of these projects, there's a footnote that describes what the project is and what we're trying to do, why we're accomplish it, why it was supported, et cetera. The difference this year for road maintenance, if you were to compare last year's warrant article to this year's warrant article, is Karen is required before spending the money or doing even an RFQ to go out to bid to actually present a plan. The select board left it with capital planning, given that Public Works Planning Board is not currently meeting, but that will be a discussion for future, that we actually have to know which roads this is going to be used for, because we're not at a point right now that we can tell the residents which roads it's going towards, but we will before any money is actually spent. So it gets the appropriation done when we need to get it done, but it is putting, I'll call it, some more rigor around the transparency around what it's going to be used for, given that the select board used to only talk about chapter 90 because they had to take an official vote, versus road maintenance was solely under the supervision of the DPW superintendent.
Okay, I misunderstood you, Jason. That's why I was asking, didn't something change in the article making the CPC, the CIPC, and a standing committee? I thought that's where you were putting it in. Okay, so I'm reading now. I see what you've done. I see what's been done. Okay, so just to be clear, everyone, there is the article, the capital article has a description of every single item on it below the article. It's by letter number. So the letter number that corresponds to the roads basically says what Jason just said. So that's where the authority is going to come for capital to basically do the monitoring that I think we all may agree now needs to be done. And whether this will satisfy the citizen petitioner who has proposed a different plan remains to be seen.
Can you put it back up, Andrew?
Which you want to see the actual language, Tim?
Andrew had it up.
Okay. There you go.
It's L. Yeah. So not to nitpick, but this is fund. This is an account, right? That is an amalgamation of funds from state and local sources, right, over multiple years.
The state's not there. The state stays with the state until you have a project, and then she says, submits an invoice and gets that we pay for it, and then we get reimbursed.
Okay.
The warrant money
and-
is sitting in the bank. It's sitting in the bank in Southborough.
But
What
Tim, it's not one fund, it's actually one fund per year.
So that's good information. Thank you. In terms of the spirit, I mean, are you really looking to say in any given year, don't spend any road money until we've approved it, right? Because what's written here is you're basically telling them they can't spend the current year's money, but anything else that's accumulated, they can do whatever they want. And they don't have to go to you.
Yeah, because I don't think we have any, it wasn't in the warrant when it got appropriated. So what we're trying to do is fix the transparency issue moving forward. Now, I fully expect though, Tim, because of the conversation that occurred at the select board, I would be very surprised knowing that Karen, if this money is approved, is going to, in your words, amalgamate like with the other previously appropriated money plus Chapter 90. I would be very surprised if that wasn't all wrapped into one presentation. I certainly will ask for it. I can't speak for my other committee members, but I think while she doesn't have a requirement to do that, because we can't go change a prior warrant, I think it will be part of a discussion.
But Jason, I don't think it makes any sense to say we're only going to basically oversee new funds and not oversee funds that are sitting in the bank right now that haven't been spent. So we need to think about this piece of as far as what we really want in the end, which in my mind is to oversee everything going forward. Tim, is that where you're going?
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of the whole plan going to capital.
And not advisory?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's more appropriate going to capital.
Oh, absolutely. And then advisory does its thing. They take a look at what capital recommends.
Yep.
So
I think it's just because it's in the warrant article, right? I mean, again, they can't spend Chapter 90 without the select board's approval. So I can't imagine the select board's going to get a road plan that's, again, not going to come to them, or they're not going to ask capital to look at it. And then the other one, Jason, I don't know if you need to put like CIPC, or future committee, but just one interesting point right there.
That's a fair point. I'll refer that to Brian, and obviously he can talk to town council on that. That's a fair point. I actually was thinking about that just as you were saying that.
Yeah, just as I was reading it, I was like, should it say or CIPC?
My guess is this money is going to be spent before the Attorney General approves that, if town meetings actually acts favorably for that article.
Yeah.
So everyone, the reason we're debating on this CPC versus CIPC is because CPC is confusing. It also refers to the much longer standing Community Preservation Committee. So that's what we've always known as CPC. So that's why the main reason for changing this committee to CIPC, so we don't confuse the two CPCs. Okay. All right. Okay. So can we go back to the list again and make sure everybody's okay? So this is kind of the last chance we're going to have to look at this, guys. We're going to vote on this next Wednesday. I think we're ready to vote on this one. So does anyone have any other questions for Jason and his committee as far as the details of the 937-500? The rest of it, we're going to talk to CPC about the 60, so don't worry. That's it's a very small project for CPC, so that we'll talk about separately. So we're only talking about the 937.5 at the moment, as far as having any further questions, any more clarification as far as what's in there.
Jason, I know I mentioned this before, and it's not something I would bring up again. I'm curious. The Northborough Road culvert, you have state funding in there. This is a road, right, that only has one house on it?
That is correct.
So why hasn't Capital, the select board, recommended, why do we need that cut through road? Why can't you just, like, from the driveway, pick a direction left or right, and then the other side of it, just shut it down? Why are we still maintaining it? Why are we paying for it? And ideally, if it's the side with the culvert, then we can just eliminate it.
I'm not even, so I think the first thing I would say is, I'm not even sure how the state picked this project to appropriate, at least 3/4 of the cost. But obviously, if we did that, then we'd obviously be throwing away that piece as
Yeah.
well. The discussions we've had, but I think if you have any more joint meetings with the select board, I would encourage you to ask this question, is because they maintain the roads, but our understanding is they wanted to keep the road open. There was a lot of discussion about Chestnut Hill Road and whether that should be closed off at some point, which then would put more pressure on Northborough Road. I mean, that was something that was brought forward by a group of residents. That wasn't necessarily something that was brought forward by a town department. And I think you would also want to inquire with both chiefs, both police and fire, because that road is used, I believe, to access the other side, mainly because they can't get some of the equipment up Chestnut Hill unless they really had to. Like they wouldn't go up Chestnut Hill towards Dairy Farm to get to that side. Now, of course, you could go up to, what is it, Johnson, and take a right.
Yeah.
But that's a discussion I think they should weigh in on as well. So our understanding was the select board had a desire to keep the road open, which is why we recommended this piece.
So Tim, I think it's worth having a discussion with them. I'm not sure they've had a real in-depth discussion. I think the only reason it's here is because we got the state money. This thing's been kicked down. This one's been kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked. So I think the only reason you're seeing it here is because we can get it done cheap now because we've got the state money coming in.
Okay. Yeah. And because of the state money, I'm less concerned about it. It just seems an odd expense for the town. But anyway, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Marcy, any other specific questions on anything that's in the 937-500?
Good evening, Capitol. I have no questions tonight. Thank you for all the work.
Tom?
Hi, thanks, Kathy. No questions now. Thanks for your time and the information.
Okay. Adam?
No questions for me. Thanks.
Eric?
Just want to confirm at this point, have you guys voted on all this? Thumbs up? Or is there anything that you haven't voted on? Like I know the DPW is on hold for a while. Is there anything you haven't formally taken a position on?
For items for town meeting, the only thing we have not voted on is the CPA article related to pickleball. We are voting on that on Monday night. We understand CPA has already approved it, and we have received all the required documentation. We just haven't taken a formal vote. So,
Awesome. Cool.
So will you let me know what your vote is, Jason? We're going to meet with them next week also.
I will. And just all votes were unanimous unless Lisa Brascio did abstain in certain votes because she wanted to preserve her vote for select board. But other than that, everything was unanimous.
Okay. All right. So we want to talk about the Algonquin Regional Stabilization, Capital Stabilization article.
Sure. Are there specific questions? Do you want me to outline at least the conversation we had with the school administration? I did listen to his presentation, was it last week? Whenever he came to visit with all of you. So I don't know. Do you want to just walk through why we voted in support of it?
We do.
Okay. So we did vote unanimously with the one noted abstention because of the select board vote. The main reason I can personally say I voted for it, and obviously Karen and Jeff are welcome to weigh in, is this is just setting up a fund. It is not funding it. It's just giving an avenue to fund it. Future funding would have to go through a town meeting as part of the budget. So if we didn't like.
Okay, stop right there. So let's explain how that would happen, because I think that's important to understand the mechanism of how it would go to town meeting.
My understanding is it would come through just in the Algonquin budget.
Well, the assessment. So
Yeah,
remember,
the
it's not
assessment.
this is not like K through 8. This is an assessment that, they take their budget and they divide it between the two towns based on the rules, right? And they say, here you go, Northborough, here you go, Southborough, send us the money. We certainly on the town meeting floor can amend the assessment, but look at the impact of doing that. You do that, then, they're really back to the drawing board because it affects Northborough too. We do that. So it is a dangerous thing to have to do because of the impact of it. So I'm not sure we want to rely on that to be able to override the assessment. Let's say they start right off with, I don't know what their plans are, but let's say they start right off with, a 5% assessment. To Southborough, that's $500,000 a year. So it's not a small number. So we're just assuming that's what they're going to do. You're trying to build a fund, right? So why wouldn't you start right off with assessing, right? You're not going to wait till you buy something because you're trying to accumulate money so that it can soften the blow of doing it. So we've just assumed that they'll start right off with an increase in assessment to reflect the max funding that they are going to be allowed to do with this article. So it will affect tax rates pretty heftily from day one. So keep that in mind as far as the fact goes. So now, Jason, keep going as far as why you guys are advocating for this.
I would add one thing. There's language in the warrant that caps the fund at $600,000. In the warrant,
A year.
Like in the, Andrew, can you, while I keep talking, Andrew, if you can just pull up that language, or I don't know what version you're working on from Mark, but I did ask for the
We're working on the
specifics.
one from last Friday.
Okay, so Mark sent me an email, and I will forward this to you, Kathy. It's from Greg to Mark with a copy to Paul Desmond and Becky Pellegrino. The latest warrant language is as follows: to see if the town will vote to approve Mass General Law Chapter 71, Section 16G.5 to authorize the establishment of a capital stabilization fund for Northborough Southborough Regional School Committee. Funds in the capital stabilization are for the sole purpose of funding capital projects at Algonquin Regional High School. The capital stabilization fund's maximum amount will not exceed $600,000. Capital projects funded through the capital stabilization fund will be presented to each of the members' town's capital planning committee. Furthermore, expenditures from the capital stabilization fund are authorized by a vote of 2/3 of all members of the regional school committee. So,
yeah, so I think, Jason, we talked about that when Becky was here, and I talked about, well, what if we have a policy, which is what that is. And the thing is that the policy that the town does not need to ratify the change in that policy, only the school board.
right, but they have to, at least I'm going to speak for myself, and Jeff and Karen can weigh in. The reason I voted in favor of it was because when they were with us, Paul Desmond, I asked him specifically, I said, you're the elected member here. Would you bring things to capital planning in Southborough before you spent the money, right? And he categorically said yes. And that's what convinced me to vote in favor of it, because again, there was going to be a mechanism.
Yeah, but Jason,
now,
you know full well that he won't be on the board 10 years from now.
But it's in the warrant language. They have to, based on how they revised the language after our discussion, they don't have a choice anymore.
Well, these revisions taking place in the last few days, Jason, because that's not in our language. And when we talked about it, he certainly didn't say that. When I did the math with him last Wednesday night, he didn't say, "Oh, it's being capped at 600." When I did the $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, he brought up in our meeting, what if there was a cap? And I said, that would be good, but you could change it, right? I mean, so I think if we can get a word from town council that 600 cap will not be able to be changed without both Northborough and Southborough town meeting, I would be more apropos. But the way they mentioned it in the call is any cap would be a policy, just like they have with the E&D policy. And
I think they listened to you, Andrew.
And that policy, what they said is that policy can be changed, right? Because they are their own town, right? There is no town meeting for them. Their town is the school committee voting to change that policy from 600 to 6 million, whatever they want it to be. And the town wouldn't have anything to do it. And while I, trust Greg and I trust Paul that they are man of their word and they'll come to capital, to Tim's point, they're not required to. And what the town is doing with this approving of a stabilization fund is they are giving up control. They no longer will get a vote on the capital items. They'll get an assessment. They could reject the assessment, which we have never done, I don't believe.
No.
And it's a very, then it has to go back to the other town and the budget, and it has to be revised. And I don't even know Kathy, from a state law perspective, with the regionalization, at what point in time can we not tell them to lower their budget? And we just have to pay. Like, what is the agree? I don't know what the language is in the agreement enough to understand our ability to push back.
Nor do I. So let's, I don't think anyone understands what happens on town meeting floor. Someone amends their budget, right? Brings it down, it gets approved. I don't really understand what happens from that point on. So, because we've never tested it either. So Jason, this language has to have been changed in the last couple of days.
As I'm saying, it has been, because I think there's two things that have happened. One is they met with capital planning about 2 months ago now. We really pushed the capital planning piece of just, there has to be some transparency of how you're going to spend the money. We also expressed concern with their list of deferred maintenance items. It's bad.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they're not pushing more for a vote. And I think part of that's on the Northborough side. But if it were me, I think they have some stuff they need to be dealing with now. I don't have a story on why the water heater got pulled. We're trying to get to the bottom of that. But I think that piece went in because of the capital planning's feedback. And I'm guessing, listening to your meeting last week, they listened to all of you and said, it's more important to get the fund set up, but put limits around how it's going to be spent to be able to achieve these smaller items. It's not ever going to be meant to do, for example, this regional athletic complex that's $5+ million. Like, that's not the intent of how we understand the stabilization, is to allow them to pick and choose certain things to deal with on a 20-year-old building without having to call 2 town meetings to get the appropriation.
Well, all I'm going to say is one would think that if our input last Wednesday had something to do with the changes, they would have told us. Why didn't they tell us they changed this? I had no idea they changed it. You just told us this. So anyway, so we'll obviously look at it again and talk about it again. But as everybody's probably tired of me saying, I just come from the John Butler world of stabilization, and I buy it, which is we'll assess it when we need it. So it's going to match up people who use it better versus people who had nothing to do with it and have left town, et cetera. So we'll see where we end up here as far as our vote goes. But this is new news to me. So
yeah, I would say, if it can be kept at, I think 600,000 is probably still a little too high for me, but say it's maybe 400,000, probably more comfortable with that. Let's say it could be capped at 600. I'm okay with that. I think
cap means at any time it's not over 600. So then they spend 600 and they can assess another 600
right away. Basically assess you 600 a year, right? And then turn it over. That's what I was saying. Like, I think of it more as like the $100,000 we give John Parent for facilities.
Okay, so 600 total, and ours is 240 or 600. So it's 600 in total, right? And ours is 240 or 600 to Southborough.
600 total.
Okay, so ours is 240.
Yeah,
which is a lot better than I thought was.
Yeah, but I think giving them 100,000 a year for facilities, kind of like we do with John Parent, to take care of this hot water heater, I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea, but it's just whether or not we're restricted to that.
A lot of money, $600,000. And I don't know that I like town meeting not having a say in how it's appropriated. For example, if they went off and decided that they wanted to put in a turf field somewhere, right?
Southworth already voted this down twice, FYI, to everybody. So we'll see. I mean, if the mood of the hall is going to be any different this time. Mr. Butler won't be there.
So Andrew, do you want to email Mark and get an opinion from Jay Tallerman, or do you want me to?
I don't mind if you could send me just the current language of the warrant. I don't have the most recent version.
I'll be honest, this only came up by accident. So I was talking to Mark on another item and he asked me if I was aware of the change. So I'll just forward you the chain.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so AP, it's all yours. Okay, anybody else from advisory want to talk about this article? It sounds like we're going to talk about it again, so I'm not sure it's worth beating it to death tonight, given we didn't know about these changes. Marcy, Eric, Tom, Adam.
No, I'm in line with what Andrew said. Clearly, we're going to talk about it again. So,
Right,
I like that there's a spirit of listening and trying to make this more appealing. But I think town council's weighing will be the biggest decision, or the biggest talking point in my mind. Right? So.
All right, okay, so, Jason, anything else?
I would just ask if this is what ends up getting printed in the warrant, and your committee decides that you're supportive but of a different amount, that you can just let me know so we can take a position on that as well.
Okay. We will definitely stay in touch with you, for sure. Okay. All right, so I'm interested, not tonight though, because we got to get the town meeting stuff done, is having you guys come back soon so we can kind of see what's on your list going forward. So we'll have another meeting as soon as we can get through and clear town meeting.
Yeah, it's not a pretty couple of years coming forward, and that does not include the school project. So
Well,
we have some work to do.
I've done some numbers with the school project in there, so I agree with you. So that's why I think we need to come right back and start talking because, oh my goodness. Okay, let's start with that. So hi, Karen. Hi, Jeff. I'm glad to see you guys. So we'll see you soon. So thank you guys for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, bye-bye. All right. Okay, so I think Catherine is here. So can you bring over Catherine McKee, and she'll let us know if there's anyone else that needs to come over with her. She's going to talk about the new trails bylaw.
Good evening.
Hey. Oh, look where she is on the trails.
So I do have just a couple slides, if I can have permission to.
So why don't you introduce yourself first, Catherine, so everybody knows what all about the wonderful stuff that you do.
Sure. So I'm Catherine McKee, Chair of Trails Committee, and we are here today to talk about our bylaw that we're putting forward at town meeting that we're asking the select board to put forward. And so we wanted just to go through at a high level what that is. I think everyone's had an opportunity to review the bylaw. We'd like to answer any questions, discuss any concerns, and then we'd like the advisory to take a position if they're prepared to do so tonight.
So we won't take a position tonight, Catherine. We're not as far ahead as you think we are with this, reviewing this. We've had a lot of other things we've been focused on. So we won't vote on this tonight. I'm hoping we can vote on it next week though. That's my plan for now. We just need a chance to talk about it after we hear from you.
Great. And next week, do you mean the joint meeting? Are you meeting again with the select board?
No, we'll take our independent votes on this one. This one, we really don't. We meet with them mostly on budget stuff, which is what we did. So we still may have another meeting with them on budget stuff, but we don't need to meet with them to talk about this. You know, if we were to take different positions, we might meet again, but we're not there yet. So I'm hoping that we can vote, and then because the warrant's actually going to print on the 9th. And so we're trying to get as many votes as we can in between now and then, so they'll be printed in the article, and then select board's doing the same thing.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great. So am I in a position to share my screen?
Yeah, Catherine, you should be good.
Thank you. So let me know when you see a beautiful cover slide.
We see it.
We good? Okay, great. So like I was saying, the Trails Committee approached legal counsel last year to ask if there was any reason we couldn't switch from an ad hoc to a standing committee. And one of the primary reasons was an ad hoc committee is really formed with a specific purpose, and then it's dissolved. And the Trails Committee has been around since 2013, so 9 years and going strong. And the bylaw just makes it a more permanent committee, as you know, with clearer responsibilities, and the organization, the structural organization will be better defined. We also approached the select board last fall to update our charter. We just expanded some text to ensure that it was more inclusive of some of the activities we did, like promoting trails in town. And at that time, we also asked if we could add associate members, non-voting associate members, and they voted that forward. And so what the bylaw is going to be doing is essentially taking the structure that currently is the committee and putting it into a more permanent structure. And we approached the general counsel also about associate members, and he said he didn't see a concern. And in a couple of other meetings, he said he actually appreciates the idea of associate members, which I'll get into some of the benefits in just a moment. And so we currently have 5 committee members, 5 voting members. And we've last year were approached, we had a full committee and we had 2 additional residents approach us and ask if there was an opportunity to serve on the committee. We have been thinking about this idea for a few years now because it's an opportunity to allow somebody to try out the Trails Committee, for example, or if they don't have, for example, bandwidth for a full-time committee, it gives them, an opportunity to serve on the committee. So it opens up opportunities to residents, but it also gives the committee an opportunity to leverage different people that might not be full-time and available. So a few other benefits that we're realizing now as well is, like I said, it kind of gives them an opportunity to try out the Trails Committee. So the Trails Committee is one of 3 committees in town that is required to do, our mission in order to accomplish our charge. We have to do manual labor. So we have to go out, we have to maintain the trails, and that takes a lot of time and effort. And having associate members gives us a little bit more bandwidth to do that. And during really busy times, peak times like spring, summer, and fall, where everybody's on vacation and it's really kind of harder to do volunteer parties, this gives us a few extra hands to do something ourselves. A lot of times, we have a lot of volunteers that come forward. We do organize work parties. That takes a lot of work. If you've ever organized volunteers, it's a big effort. So sometimes, if we have to do some trail maintenance, a few of us will go out there by ourselves. So having those extra hands is really helpful. And a few other things. So this isn't a new idea. Other communities are doing it, and they're doing it with these types of committees. So Ashland Town Forest has associate members. Weston has a rail trail advisory committee. They do it as well. And Chatham just as a few. And we found like up to 12. So again, not recreating the wheel, just, using what's out there to kind of work to our benefit. And we want to serve the town really well. And this helps us. We think that, we've vetted it with town council. We've discussed it with the select board. We have support for this. So we really think it's really helpful. Sometimes when there's turnover on your committee, you might have a gap in knowledge. If we have associate members that can step up in that role, that really helps with that transition as well. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish. And then in case you didn't know, the other wonderful members on the committee, Satyendra Sharma, Isabel Murphy, Tom McCoolier, and Isabella Bogdansky, Will Warren and Tony Schoner, they are both associate members who have been serving since last fall. So I'll stop there and open it up for questions.
So I'm going to start with Tim.
Hello.
Hey, Tim.
So I assume that the fact that you don't require registered voters is because you're simply looking for more people.
Yeah, so that was just one way to be more inclusive. So for example, the permanent legal resident who can't be a registered voter, they can serve on our committee in that capacity. Now, in that scenario, they would not necessarily be able to step up into a full-time member because those are registered voters. So that's the only differential.
Hey, Tim, Jim's going to be here in a few minutes. Tim Haggerty. I think advisory is the only one that requires registered voters.
Is that
So
true?
there's a few committees that do. It's actually,
Yeah.
I was actually looking at that today.
But isn't that the minority?
There's a
Vast
few that
minority?
are registered voters. There are some that say voters, of which we do not define what a voter is. So I would say that's just about useless. So I think there's an ambiguity there. I would, like MTC, for instance, is just resident. I would suggest just doing residents and get rid of this voting. I think from a trails committee or another perspective, I think, there's certainly, why not open it up to all residents? I don't think you need voting as a restriction that we should add to any committee.
Well, advisory is different because of our role at town meetings. So I'd still distinguish advisory from the rest of them, but let's not get into that for this. Okay, so Catherine, can you put your slide back up?
Oh, sure. I didn't mean to prematurely bring it down. Okay. Are you seeing it?
Okay, can you go to the first one though?
this one.
Yeah. Okay, so just to be clear, how much is your budget currently?
We don't have a budget. We
Right.
haven't had a budget for 9 years. So
Everybody's got to understand that they have no
you
money.
tell me, what is our budget?
I know, so they have no money. So they're doing all the work themselves. So, you know, keep that in mind. They literally are out there doing manual labor with nobody's being paid.
Yeah. And we also, a lot of times, you know, we have a great support system from Recreation, which we are grateful for, but a lot of times, you know, the committee is pitched in buying tools on their own dime and certain things like that. So this, obviously having a budget would be beneficial.
What can the associate members not do besides not vote?
Really, that's the only restriction. They're not going to affect quorum. That was a specific decision we made. I think you guys know very well, and every committee, commission, and board in town, quorum is very difficult to meet. We were not interested in increasing our quorum before COVID. We had a hard time sometimes meeting. That's not going to work for us. So this was an alternative, and I approached, so that's why we kind of came up with this model.
Well, we can definitely sympathize with that one for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Kat, if I could make a suggestion, I would just call them alternates, like ZBA does, which is most committees, other towns use their associate members like for their ZBA.
Right. And so that's a good point. And we went back and forth with the name. And so we landed on associate members because there was alternate members already, and we didn't want to confuse it. So this is kind of where we ended up. Now, I love the suggestions, but I'll be honest with you, I don't think we have any more. There's not an opportunity that I don't think Mr. Purple wants us to make any more changes to the text. But if something comes out of this, obviously really important, we are happy to go back and make a suggestion if it's critical.
Well, the warrant is going to the printer in 9 days. So you think you're done. So when we get to Jim Haggerty in a minute, he's got an opinion on the associate versus something else. Are there any, does anybody know? I don't know. Are there any other committees that use associate members besides ZBA's alternate members?
I don't think in this capacity, I would say no, not in town, but I was told that I think zoning bylaw has an associate member defined in their bylaw, but someone would want to confirm that. But we brought that up to general counsel. We brought that to his attention, and he said he did not feel like that was an issue because it's defined in our bylaw what this is, so there shouldn't be any confusion. That's his opinion.
Okay. AP, anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Marcy?
Thank you, Catherine. It makes sense to me. I'll be interested to hear what Mr. Haggerty says about alternate and associate members. But aside from the language, I don't really have any questions. I think it makes sense. Clearly, these members have been very helpful in meeting the needs of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam?
Yeah, hi, Catherine. I don't have any questions here. I think it's great that there's people as passionate as you and the other members of the team are to do this great work. So I know myself and my kids try and take advantage of it. So thank you.
Great, you're welcome.
Tom?
Thanks, Kathy. Hi, Catherine. Thanks for your time tonight. I don't have any questions, but I echo what Adam says as a frequent user of the trails. So appreciate all your efforts in doing that and all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll stay tuned for a couple of upcoming guided hikes. That's just my shameless plug. You'll see some information circulating
Noted.
about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Eric?
Yeah, no, I'd echo the same. No questions, Catherine. Thank you so much for what you do. My family appreciates it as well. So I'm looking forward to what you guys can do with a bigger group of supporters and maybe even a little budget.
Thank you.
Anything else from you, Tim?
Yeah, just one comment, which is a kind of a follow-up, like kind of a part two. Consider in the future attempting to get a seat on the Community Preservation Committee, because I think you would be a valuable member. And it's a
You mean the
potential
Trails
course.
Committee have a representative on the Community Preservation Committee?
Yes, just like recreation and open space and the other boards that have representation on that board, I think. Particularly as a permanent standing committee, you fit right in there. The maintenance work wouldn't be relevant, but I think you have a voice that's important. And so it could be an interesting part too.
Thank you.
So
Tim.
Catherine, their funds could fund a new trail or, a capital expense. That's their mission. Their buckets. One of their buckets is open space.
Well, you may recall last year we did put forward a CPA.
Oh, you did.
application, and
Okay,
we
so you
used
know
those-
that.
So
Right.
we use those funds. Thank you. You supported us. We use those funds to go after a Mass Trails grant, a $270,000 Mass Trails grant. So if that is funded, then we're already going to have a wonderful new trail when the Peninsula Trail opens up, but we're going to be able to put in an accessible boardwalk and footbridge and some other fun things for the town. So looking forward we'll know in July whether that moves forward or not.
Yeah, we
So,
spent
yeah,
a lot of time on that fence. I forgot about that. Yeah, so you know
not
about.
just the fence.
Really?
There's more than the fence.
Was that the gold fence?
That's the
Yes.
golden fence, yes.
That was the golden fence.
So yeah, go ahead.
You don't know whether you've gotten the grant yet or not? You haven't heard?
No, they announce awards in July. The grant application, the proposal was submitted February 1st.
Okay.
So, and if you don't mind, I have a hunch of what some of the future comments are going to be. I do want to address one thing. A concern came up about associate members and open meeting law. And so we took those concerns, and what we did was we put together a member conduct policy just to ensure that all members of the Trails Committee are required to go through the open meeting law training, to be aware of and to make sure that they're not going to, commit any offenses. And actually, associate members are not any more likely to commit an open meeting law offense than any other member of a committee. But just because we heard some concerns, we did put together a member policy. It's on our website. You're welcome to go. It's clearly noted as a policy. And we had general counsel review it, and we modeled it after the town of Weston, because we really take it seriously. We took all the feedback we got from the select board and from others, and we wanted to make sure that that we were doing the right thing, that we weren't bringing harm. And so the onus is put on the voting members to ensure that no serial deliberations happen. But we have gone, we've done due diligence to ensure that we're addressing concerns and making sure this is a good move for Southborough. So thank you. Appreciate your time tonight.
If so, I don't know if you've got time later, but Jim Haggerty is going to be here. Let's see. A little bit down the road, so 9:45 or so. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, so maybe a little bit earlier. So if you wanted to tune back in and see what he says, because we will talk to him about this, because I know he's got some.
Yeah, I would love to, because I really want to, get on the same side as everybody and just, move forward in a positive way. So happy to hang around and watch your exciting meeting.
So I don't have any questions other than I just want to tell you that everything I hear about you in particular, and I'm sure your other committee members too, but you just get rave reviews as far as what you do. So thank you for doing this for this town, because what a nice thing it is that you do.
Well, thank you. Please
much
know it's a
appreciated.
full committee, and lots of people participate. So we appreciate
I know that. I
and
know.
I will share that. Thank you.
All right, anybody have anything else before we say goodnight to Catherine? And Catherine, feel free to raise your hand when we talk to Jim if you want to come back in.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
All right, have a great night.
Good night for now. All right, thank you. Okay, so next is Mr. Davis, and he's here. So can you bring over Tim Davis?
All right. Good evening.
Good evening. Another late night for you. Sorry.
Okay. Used to it. The time of season.
So Tim, what's CPRP?
Certified Parks and Rec Professional.
Yeah, neato. Yeah.
There you
So just to kick this off, we met with you last Thursday with the select board. So we have agreed to postpone the discussion as far as the rec revolving fund. So that's not on the table right now. We're going to do that after town meeting. So all we're here to talk about tonight is your budget, which of course is pretty simple. So let's see. I've got it in front of me. You just want to talk about what's in it, which is salary.
Yeah, mainly it's salaries. There was a small increase. Our new programmer came on board in September. So saved a little money there. So no real increase on the program coordinator side, but just salary. We do have a placeholder for the 9/11 pilot payment for DCR, but that's money in, money out, as we know. And then we do have two new line items, one for playground inspections, and then one for, as you just spoke to Kat, some support for the Trails Committee. So playground inspections would take care of professional third-party inspections for the Arts Center where the rec department is located, Fayetteville Playground, and the Townhouse Playground, to take care of that over the summer. And then, as mentioned with Trails Committee, $1,750 for support for the Trails Committee, and that's everything from financial support for maintenance, supplies, tools. They do attend a yearly conference and just some outreach and promotion materials that they've been doing year to year. So just a small line item for support for that.
So they do get a little money.
Hopefully.
Their budget's zero. Their budget is zero. They have no budget, so okay.
Yeah, we've been looking to do this for a few years, so hopefully this is the year.
All right. So anyone have any questions for Tim? I feel like we beat him up pretty bad last week. I felt a little bit bad, so I was hoping this was going to be a very pleasant meeting, so he could recover from that. But we will address the revolving fund later. The cost of the van, of course, you've got to get that trued up once you pick it out, but that's not going through town meeting either, so we don't have to address that tonight either. So anyone having a specific question on his budget, which is basically 2 people? Eric?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Marcy?
No questions. Thanks.
So it's just to be clear, it's a 3.77% year-over-year increase is what he's proposing. Tom?
No questions. Thanks for your time, Tim.
Adam?
I don't think I have actually seen the budget. I wasn't here. I wasn't at the meeting last week, so I don't have any questions, but I haven't seen it, I don't think.
And we didn't talk about his budget at the meeting. We basically, what we did is certain budgets were held that either select board or advisory wanted to talk about. Other than that, we said fine. So his budget was fine. Nobody held the budget. It was the discussion on the rec revolving fund that took all the time. So here's his budget.
Yeah.
And
So I guess the salaries are less than other budgets, the increase.
so can you so because he replaced one person with a person making less is what's happened here.
Just the percent increase, sorry, is 1.4 seems less than any other budget we've seen.
When we hired our new employee, we hired him at the starting rate of his grade. And what we had budgeted was higher than that because of our past employee. So there was no increase there, really, percentage wise.
Okay.
When you look year to year.
So the 2 things that have been added are what you just said, to inspect the playgrounds and to give Catherine's committee a little money. Ignore the pilot payment one, even though it's there. It's only a small increase because that's a wash. The town gets the same money and then we pay out the same money because of the way pilot payments work on DCR land. So that's nothing. What are we looking at? What was that?
That was just the breakdown, the backup material for the playground inspections. I don't know who has control of the screen.
That was just playground inspections. Yeah, those were my questions. Tim was, so is it only certain ones of these we're doing, not the full 3,000?
Correct. So it was determined working with the team that the schools will take care of their side of the house, and
Gotcha.
we will just do the top 3.
And have we done this before? So it's just, this is the first time?
We've done it before, just because we
Okay.
have to. We used to do it in-house. We had certified people in-house, but just for liability reasons, we're moving more towards third party for the town's sake.
Okay.
What if there's findings from these inspections? Do we have budget planned? Maybe not in your budget, but how
Yeah,
will
it's
we?
dependent. It's dependent on where it is. We work with DPW for the minor fixes. Anything that, one of these playgrounds is brand new, another one's less than, is about 5 years old. So, the things that we see are pretty minor, and they can be fixed in-house between rec and DPW.
You could also probably go to facilities if you really had a bigger number to go through their fund they've got set up. Okay, so if Catherine's still here, does she know she's got 1750?
Yeah, she worked with me to determine that number, so she's very aware.
Okay, well, good.
So Kathy, I would say once, if assuming that they get their standing committee approved, right, next year we should move that into a isolated budget for trails.
And Tim probably won't have a problem with that. I wouldn't think.
Happy to work with them. Kat's a pleasure to work with, so.
That's what we hear. Okay, so again, this is one of the simpler budgets that we look at. Anyone have any questions on this one? Again, ignore the pilot payment. That is a wash. The town gets the same amount of money. It literally comes in and goes back out. Okay, so see, Tim, very easy night.
Take it.
All right, so we will see you soon, but I think we are probably ready with your budget for town meeting.
That's great.
Okay, all right, so thank you for coming and staying so
No
late.
problem. Yep. Have a good night.
Long
Thanks,
day.
Tim.
Okay,
Yep.
bye-bye. Okay, is Melissa here yet? I don't think so. Okay, what can we do in between? All right, so while we wait for her, because we are ahead, she wasn't supposed to be here until 9:15, so we're way ahead. Let's just look at the budget so we can show everybody where it stands. Andrew, you want to pop it up?
Sure, hold on a second.
And Eric, can you watch for Melissa Danza to appear?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they also figured out how that if we don't approve things, how it happens with the schools.
All right, go ahead.
Hold on, let me share that then.
You're specifically talking Algonquin.
Correct. Hold on. Stop that. I think it's this one. Oh, I think it's this piece here.
Where did you find this? Oh, it's state law.
Yeah, because everything with regional school is all state law.
So they've got to go back to the drawing board.
So they'd have to go back, and I think they'd have to convene a meeting of both towns, sounds like. And then both towns would have to vote. But it could be, it's just a majority of the people at that committee. So Northborough has more population, I believe, right?
They do.
Right. So in theory, is if, for some reason, Northborough really wanted something and Southborough didn't, they would have more votes to override us.
They've got about 15,000. We go out of 10. That's where you get your 60-40 ratio.
Yeah.
So it'd be a joint meeting. Voters would go and decide with a majority vote.
Correct. And they could vote to approve a greater or lesser amount, and then the regional school committee would have to ratify that.
Okay, well, good job, Andrew. So there we go.
But I don't really like that as a solution.
No, I don't either, but at least we know.
Yeah. But I thought that was interesting.
All right, okay. All right, now let's pop up the spreadsheet and take a look at it.
Ignore all my math on the side.
Yeah, so don't pay any attention to anything from column L over for the moment. Just focus on K to the left. So the reason you haven't seen a whole lot of back and forth as far as the budget goes, if we didn't have the problem with the increase in house prices, 2.3%, which is in JK 12, is a really good year-over-year budget increase, especially in a year where inflation was 6%. So we'd be pretty happy at this point with 2.3%. We still quibble with a few things, but it would be a really good one. But because of the what we think is the increase in house prices, the increase to houses is going to be 5%. The increase to other types of properties is going to probably be negative when it's all said and done. So the buildings around town are going to be very happy with their tax bill next year. And of course, the house prices or the houses won't be. So we're still hoping that that 5 comes down before the tax bills actually go out. But as far as what we're going to probably end up going with town meeting with, there's not much more we can do to this 2.3. I don't think, unless someone else has a brainstorm what to do. Yeah, the $30,000 is probably going to come out for sure. If you go back to, we think that we'll be able to convince the treasurer to increase local receipts by a number higher than he has. That will help a little bit. So I think those two things get us in the 4s for sure. But it's kind of hard to see how we get into 3s as far as what we're projecting the tax bills to be for houses, which of course is your audience that day. You don't have a lot of buildings sitting there. You've got people that have houses, and that's what they're concerned about. Now, after town meeting, a few things can happen. The state aid, which is G22, local aid, that could go up more than what we see. There's only a tiny increase so far with what Baker has proposed. The legislature tends to be more generous, and they've got a lot of money. So that may go up. If you remember, what Greg Martineau has asked us to do is to write a letter to our reps and ask for that number to go up, ask for all components of it to go up. So I think we should do it. There's nothing to lose. Select board, I think, should write their own letters so they get more than one letter. So what I'd like to do tonight is see if everybody agrees that we should write the letter and then decide who's going to write it, and then we can approve it next meeting. It's a pretty simple letter. As far as, well, what should be in it. So anybody opposed to writing a letter to our legislature to ask for that number to go up when the legislature votes in June?
No, Kathy, I think it makes sense. I mean, Northborough just did something similar with all their representatives, and I think there's a couple. The biggest thing for the town is if that pilot payment legislature goes through. Okay,
so let's talk about that too in a second. Because I think that's important too. So Greg probably asked Northborough to do the same thing, Andrew.
Yes.
As far as the letter goes. Okay, so I'm seeing no one saying they disagree with trying to see if we can get the legislator to up this number for us, because it needs to go up. You know, if it went up 4%, it would then at least be keeping in line with the budget increase. But it's not. You know, when you go from 3732 to, excuse me, 3732 to 3832, that's only $100,000. So that's what, 2%, not even 2%. All right, so I'm seeing no one say let's not write the letter, right?
Yeah, I think we should write a letter on that one, but I think even more, I think we should try to meet with our legislators and go over from other things too.
Okay, but two separate things.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, as far as, let's stick on this for a second, then we'll talk about that. As far as things that might change between now and the time we write our report that we have to present to town meeting and present the report to town meeting, those are the things that could change. Now go ahead.
I was gonna say, the only other one, Kathy, that might be worth talking to is talking to Karen. In the latest supplemental budget for FY22 that was just approved by the Senate, it included $100 million for the rehabilitation and resurfacing of local roads. And I think the Southborough would get like 200 and something thousand of that. And whether or not that would allow her to, basically it's more Chapter 90 money, but it's not really Chapter 90, to have less road maintenance capital costs.
And I can tell you that the answer is, I'm pretty sure the answer is no. She's so far behind with regular road maintenance outside Main Street, that there's a possibility that the number is so large, it's going to have to be bonded. So that would be a small dent to what I think the pent up number is, from what I can tell. I've got a list that she's put together. I've seen a list that she's given to capital as far as what the cost of it is. And it's a big number. You got Corderville Road, that's alone $3 million. And then she's got some roads like Pine Hill Road that is such a big project, she doesn't have a number next to it. So I definitely hope that she does what she can to get our share of that, but I think it's just a small amount compared to what I think we need. So I don't think it's going to change the $400,000 we've got right now.
Okay.
Okay, but I mean, we can talk about it if you disagree.
No,
we can
it
talk
just
about
was one of those, if we're gonna get 200, right, in theory, in my head, that we need the 400, right? But to your point, I think we need every dollar we can get.
To my point, we need $10 million. So it's a little bit of it. Okay, so then the only disagreement I think we have, by the way, so all the little things that we talked about at the meeting last night, or last Thursday, most of those are resolved. So does anyone want to go through those? Why don't we talk about the civil defense, Andrew, because you know the answer to that one.
Yep. So in the conversation with Chief Achilles, we actually met Chelsea and I with Chief today. And so he lowered his civil defense budget $3,000, I believe it was.
So go to the operational budget one. There you go. Oh, there you go.
So it's about a 10% increase now.
So remember the discussion was he moved over overtime from his main budget to civil defense for the person who is designated as the emergency officer. And then the question was, well, why didn't your overtime and the fire department go down? And Chelsea and Andrew have met with the chief and he's agreed to reduce this by $3,000 because of that question. So that got taken care of. The second question was what to do with the planning board budget when they removed the cost of paying for a minute taker. Why didn't their budget go down by that? They basically took the money and put it elsewhere. And Karina Quinn has sent me an email that I just got right before this meeting that went through their rationale, and it's I think it makes sense. So we're probably done with that budget unless someone still has a disagreement with it. They put it in places that they probably should have had numbers in to begin with. And so they did it because by shifting it around, they still had a pretty okay year-over-year increase. Where is playing? We're there. So it's 3.85.
Yeah.
So I think we're done with that one unless someone wants to go back to that one. The explanation was really specific and seemed to make sense.
Yeah, guess to me, it's probably okay, but the optics of it are bad, right? If they needed that stuff, it should have been their original budget.
Yeah. But
right?
do you want to fight any more with it?
No, well, I'll leave it up to the select board if they want to bring it up again.
All right, so that's the second one. The third one is the library. So they are adamant that they do not want to take out the reduced cost of the remote hotspots. They have sent an email that basically says that almost all libraries in Massachusetts are doing this. It's something that the library association that they are part of recommends, that it's not in their budget because they got a grant, that libraries really are doing this throughout the state. So they really, really feel strongly that they want to leave this in. They reduced the cost because they needed a piece of it for something else. So they did move some of it out. So it's a couple hotspots. So
Yeah.
I can't spend any more time on this one, Tim.
No, I think it's stupid.
So I've told him we disagree, but we're not going to stand up and amend a budget for $1,000 at town meeting. It's a waste of a lot of people's time.
I think I'm just going to leave it and say I think that this $1,000 is a stupid use of their political capital.
All right. So what I did say is, okay, if we do, go along with this grudgingly, we don't agree with it, but we're not going to try to get it reduced at town meeting. Then we do want to see numbers next year. We want to see truly who used it and for what, and where they lived. So they've agreed they're going to keep really good track of what happens from this point on.
Kathy, I think one, they haven't adjusted their budget. It's still 2,100.
I've been told that they have, maybe they have not given it to Brian.
Correct, but if it's not in Brian's spreadsheet, it's it doesn't matter.
So I'll check on that one and see what's going on.
Yeah, the details still on their one posted in our folder is still 2,100, and the number still ties to Brian's.
Was 2,100 the reduced number?
No,
No.
that's the original number. They're going to reduce it
that's
to
right, okay.
5,000.
Kathy, I think this might be something. I feel like this almost should rather sit in like youth and family services. I mean, the benefit of this is for people that don't have access to internet or going through something, or there's something that tragic happens and they lose power to the house, or there's a fire, right? I feel that youth and family services is probably better served to understand where the need is and deploy them. But
It
that's
is a very valid point, and I made that point individually. One of their board members came in and ate lunch with me to talk about it. And I made that point because the Friends of the Youth and Family Services has an emergency fund for stuff like this. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
So I agree. The example that Ryan gave us last Thursday of the mother and son who come in and check out the hotspot because they have no internet is one that truly belongs to the emergency fund and not to the library. I mean, what an inconvenience for that kid to have to keep going in and checking out a hotspot to get internet. So that, to me, that's definitely not what it's for.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anybody else want to talk? Do we want to spend any more time on the hotspots? We spent a whole lot of time on hotspots.
Not on the hotspots. Andrew, do you mind scrolling up to the benefits budget? Thought I saw it somewhere.
It's on RevCap, so it's
this one here.
Sorry, what row? Oh, employee benefits.
so it is.
C74, sorry, down here. Right, employee benefits here.
Okay, yeah, that matches what I had. I thought I saw it somewhere on the sheet that you were on before, but maybe you were scrolling pretty fast. I thought I saw a 4.5% increase.
You did.
But
You
maybe
did.
Employee
So
benefits.
You've got the
Oh.
town separated up here. The town
Yeah,
separated from schools, so the two numbers are there. One's higher than the other.
okay. Yep, that's what I saw. It's in two spots combined. I think you got it right then.
So Adam, Brian is coming next Wednesday to talk about benefits. So you will be on next Wednesday as far as talking about those.
Yep, sounds good.
All right. Okay, so back to the smaller things we talked about last week to get those resolved. ADA. So that one is 2,500. The ADA committee had asked allegedly to increase that to 5. I think they're okay with 2,500. And I say okay. I didn't say they were thrilled, but I think they're okay. I've talked to Bonnie Faniff, who's the chair of the committee. I think they're okay. What I said to her, they just don't have a line item budget. It's just a number. It's a nebulous number, but they do have plans. One thing that they were told by Mark Purple is that since they haven't spent it this year at all, then it didn't make sense to double it. And they are about to spend it this year. They've got plans of things they're going to use it for, and they've got plans next year. They just don't have numbers to associate with those plans. So it's my understanding that they understand it's going to be 2,500 in the warrant and that they are not going to ask to amend it on town floor, at least as of tonight. Okay, so I assume that we're okay with that. The next one is EDC, and I don't have the answer on this one. Do you, Andrew? Mark Purple is supposed to talk to EDC and try to get to the bottom of what's going on with their minute taker cost, because their budget should have gone down when they removed it and it didn't.
I don't know.
So that's one thing I don't know yet. We're meeting with them on the 13th. So after we've actually voted on the budget.
Hey,
Okay,
Kathy,
so there's that one. Go ahead.
so sorry to interject, but Melissa Danza is in the audience at this point.
Okay, good. The only other thing is the MTC, we're just trying to maybe move around a small piece of their budget from their department to the IT departments or software. Is Matt still in the audience? He was here.
No, he's
No,
not
he's not. Okay,
currently.
he's gone. Okay, so that's trivial. So I mean, we literally moved one place to the other. It's not going to affect anything. Okay, so now we'll come back to this after we talk to Melissa and to Jim, but that at least is kind of an overview of what it looks like tonight. All right, so can you bring Melissa over?
Good evening. How is everyone tonight?
Hi, Melissa.
Hey, Melissa.
So AP, you want to handle this one since you worked with conservation last year?
I did, but I certainly can.
On their grant.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the big thing is the addition of the part-time, right? Without that, the overall budget is exactly the same. Here's the information on the part-time resource, part-time resource.
Melissa, who is she being shared with?
So she's going to remain as ZBA, and then 12 hours will be designated to conservation, and the 7.5 remaining with ZBA.
Okay.
Yeah, but Melissa, it's kind of a net, right? Their ZBA is
Yep.
lowering theirs, and so it's overall,
Yep.
it's just basically shifting some hours from ZBA's budget to yours.
Correct.
So I hope this makes you guys happy that you've actually got a person with dedicated hours.
Very much. Yes.
So they've been asking for this for a while, as far as needing a part-time person. And there's been a lot of discussion at the townhouse as to how to move around, support people to try to accommodate everyone. And the answer last year was to have one person support like 5 different departments. So this is going to clean this up so that this person, Kelly, is going to only support 2 people or 2 departments. So the commission's happy with this, Melissa?
Yep. And as an update to the committee, for those who might not know, we also moved the conservation office down to the basement of Corderville Hall. So I'm going to be in the same building and in the same location as the part-time person as well, which will be very, very helpful.
That makes sense. So what office are you taking over?
So it's where ZBA was in that larger area. So the part-time person has now been moved out in kind of the common space with building. And I'm just in that existing first office right on the right.
All right, that makes sense. Okay, so anybody want to ask a question about the budget first, and then we'll ask Melissa what else is going on. So Melissa, you think $30,000 is enough for all the maintenance, stewardship, et cetera?
I know last fiscal year, we did promise that the increase would be staying constant, at least for, the next couple of years. We're kind of planning out what we're going to be doing with the right now town meeting. They're asking for some of the properties that make sense to be under Concom to be moved under our jurisdiction. So as we kind of come into better terms and what that might entail and what we might, utilize for yearly monitoring for properties, that might have some costs associated with it, mostly just staff time will be the biggest resource. But as of right now, that 30,000 is just solely being utilized for Breakneck Hill and Town Forest, with minimal kind of expenditures that we've been starting to use at the Halloran property, and other kind of conservation lands that we have if we need to do something at the golf course and related to the conservation restriction. But that 30,000, at least as of right now, is primarily for Breakneck Hill and Town Forest.
So does the work that's going to be done on Breakneck to clean up the mess there, does that affect you at all?
That is not going to be utilized out of this bracket. I believe that the select board has recommended at least phase one be utilized out of the ARPA funds.
They have, so I agree with that. So will that help you though? By
Yes.
that happening, will that take some pressure off you as far as what you need to do up there?
Oh, for sure. Yes. Yeah.
Good. Okay, so AP, you want to start with any other questions?
No, I think it all makes sense.
All right. Tim?
Sorry, as I'm mute. I have no questions. Thank you.
Marcy?
Hello, my question for everyone has always been, what is the dues and memberships? So could you just tell me what dues and memberships conservation is paying?
Sure. So for dues and membership, every town in Massachusetts or city is part of the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissioners. So that gives every member and the staff person a membership and yearly access to webinars and trainings, etc.
Okay. Thank you.
Tom?
No questions. Thanks for your time, Melissa.
Thank you.
Eric?
No questions, but thank you so much. I was at Breakneck this evening before this.
Oh,
Love it.
beautiful. Look out for our Scoop the Poop campaign for the stewardship and trails committees.
You know, I didn't want to bring it up, but yes, that's amazing. Much needed.
Well, Melissa, I was going to say, we have a great poop scooping service that does my house. Duty calls. They're pretty inexpensive. Maybe we should, maybe we could squeeze that in the budget.
Yes, be on the lookout for be on the lookout for the poop ferry that will be coming. I think the Trails Committee and the Stewardship Committee especially have been putting on a lot of great programming. So that should be coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Interesting. Adam?
Yeah, I guess my only question is, it's such a small amount. Do you guys do, or are you not doing anything that you would like to be able to do? And other than salaries, it's just such a tiny budget that I just wonder, is it restricting things that would benefit the town?
I would say there's definitely a lot more that we can do with open space in town. Even at Breakneck Hill alone, there's a lot more kind of yearly maintenance activities that the Stewardship Committee could probably fund a lot more easily and more consistently if they had an increased budget. A lot of it has come down to just the high cost of tree removal. So we've kind of tried to phase it out as best as we can throughout the years. But I think, and we've also tried to go after mass wildlife grants, which unfortunately haven't been successful the last 2 years. But there's definitely things that we could do more of. I think we need to kind of sit down and really come up with what our priorities are for the next couple of years, which is on our docket.
Melissa, how many parcels are under your jurisdiction besides the forest and Breakneck?
We have, I want to say there's probably about 12, either through conservation restrictions or just deed restrictions for open space. And there's definitely, I think, going to be more coming that have been under the select board that should have been under conservation already.
All right, so it's a lot. All right, so that's something to consider going forward. I just, we've got a lot of parcels that the town owns or has control over that just get totally ignored, right, Melissa? Because there's no money to do anything. So we focus on the couple big ones and the golf course, and the other ones get ignored. All right, anybody have anything else for Melissa? So Melissa, thank you for everything you do. You do a great job. I hope you know that we think that. So I'm really glad you got your part-time person.
So am I. Yes, thank you.
Finally. All right, so thank you. I think we're fine with your budget. If you take out the 14,839, Andrew's right, it's like what, 2.5 or so. So it's fine. So we will see you later.
Great. Have a great night, everyone.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. All right, so Mr. Haggerty is here. Can we bring him over?
Hello.
Hey. So we see you, Jim. You're frozen.
That's a picture.
Yeah. There he is.
There it is.
A good picture. All right. So does everyone know our esteemed town clerk, Jim Haggerty? If not, here he is. Here he is. So welcome, Jim. Jim used to be on advisory for many years, so he understands advisory very well. His fond memories of being on advisory, I think. So Jim, let's start off with the trails bylaw, because Catherine, I think, is, yeah, there she is. So she's still here. So we met with her tonight first, and I told her that you might have some comments on the bylaw itself. So she was going to hang around and hear what you had to say, if I'm right about you're having some comments.
Well, I had an article number 27 that came in to try to standardize definition of terms across a lot of committees and to preclude the use of associate members. But I have pulled that article, and I will come back and address that with the Board of Selectmen at the start of the next year. I am in disagreement with this, and I feel like I'm trying to grab a cloud here because I cannot read the latest version of what Catherine has, and it has changed so dramatically. But overall, I think it's it's just really foolish for the town to have articles that define their own terms. A quorum should be a quorum should be a quorum. We shouldn't be defining, like in the MTC, 2,400 words, and that's that article. It talks about how people can be removed, how people can be replaced. It talks about the MTC says you'll be a resident and not a town office or employee. The SPAC, which is a little bit better at only 800 words, has words in there that say you'll be a registered voter and not a town officer or employee. And the latest version of the trails had similar stuff where they were defining their own terms. And I think that's just a really bad idea for the town. I think the town needs to decide, and this is an issue for the Board of Selectmen to decide, to bring an article forward next year to define, do they want residents who participate on boards and committees to be registered voters? Is it okay just to be a voter or a resident? Does age matter? For example, there was a lady who was recently appointed as a resident to the Near East School Ad Hoc Committee. She's not a registered voter. Okay. And there's so much confusion about these terms that we shouldn't have individual boards with bylaws defining these terms. The voters should decide what they want. Now, does it make any sense that the MTC says that you have to be a resident of town, but the SPAC says you have to be a registered voter? Does it make sense that SPAC says you can't be a town employee? And I'll give you a classic example why that's a bad idea. I think overall, anytime you have a rule that deprives somebody of an opportunity to participate in the democratic process, you better have a pretty darn good reason for that, all right? So I suppose these things were written, and the Trails Committee started out, frankly, as a clone of some of these other committees. They had help from somebody else to help draft this, so they started from a position of complexity. But Kate Battles works in my office 15 hours a week, and I think a lot of you know her. She's on a committee right now. What you might not know about Kate is Kate was a special education teacher once upon a time. So if Kate wanted to be a member of the SPAC committee, she would be a heck of an addition to that committee. So why should she be deprived of being a member of that committee? Why do you want to deprive people from being a member of the Trails Committee because they're an employee? The latest person I said they might be an employee. So what if we had somebody who was a page at the library? Why would we want to say they couldn't participate? It just doesn't make sense. And there was a big issue about quorum here. We're talking about two people to put on this committee to go through all this hoopla to create two members. That's all you're talking about, two members. And if you do this, you're going to be doing this for the senior center, all the people that are on the Friends of the Seniors. Why wouldn't they want to be associate members? Friends of Recreation, same things. Friends of the Library. Why wouldn't you do the same thing for them? And one of the early meetings that Catherine put, and I said this to somebody just yesterday, that Catherine is to Trails what Tom Brady was to the Patriots. She does a superb job, and I have nothing but great respect for her. But this just doesn't make a lot of sense. And there is a cost to this because every one of these people has to have a town email at $100 a whack. So you're going to open up the floodgates. I don't think we should have associate members for anything. I think if you want to participate in the committee, great. There's a charity in town that is, came to me to be a member. I just can't attend their meetings, but I go when I can help them, and I attend those things. I just don't think this makes a lot of sense. And I especially don't like, I would like to see the town in the fall. I hope that an article come forward that will prevent associate members. And I'm going to give you the doomsday option for this. Let's go back a couple of years when EDC was an ad hoc committee. And the chair of the EDC asked to be a special municipal employee because he wanted to represent some of his clients in town. He's a developer, he's an attorney. All right, well, there was a big to-do about him becoming a special municipal employee. What if that board of selectmen at the time said, you know what, we're gonna create associate members on your board and we'll make you an associate member. So he'd participate, he'd be involved, but his name wouldn't be on the decision. And I just think that's a really bad idea. And at the end of the day, as Catherine had said early on in this whole process, this was to give recognition to the two people that wanted to help by putting their name up on the website. I think we're opening ourselves up for a lot of water. I also, from my own personal view, I think committees are much better off being ad hoc than they are being permanent committees. Because when something goes wrong, the selectmen can step in and drop the quota. And this happened a couple of years ago with the scholarship committee. They couldn't get enough members on the committee. Now, I strong armed my wife to join the committee to help them get to its quorum. And the selectmen at the time went to a meeting and dropped their quorum so they could actually meet and talk about things. They can change their responsibilities. They can do all kinds of things. And frankly, when I see some of the language in the early versions about the Trails being responsible for having responsibility over some activities in town, I'll use my Tom Brady analogy. And this is a left-handed compliment to Catherine. But, you know, committee members come and go. And sometimes committees are very powerful and they're effective. And then they have a change in makeup and they're no longer powerful and effective. That happened with the scholarship committee. For years, they were gangbusters, and something happened, they were down. And my Tom Brady analogy, look at the Patriots when Tom left, all right? And there'll be a time when Catherine's not going to be in that committee. And do we really want that committee to have some of these responsibilities that I think probably are better off in DPW or recreation? So I'm sort of at a huge disadvantage here because I have not seen the latest version of this. And I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. And I think if you vote for this, there's no reason why every other committee that has friends of can do this as well. And honestly, my 2 cents is that this should probably create a Friends of the Trails Committee, a Friends of, a 501c3. There's plenty of them in other towns and stuff here. You could fundraise, you could do all kinds of things. You're not restricted to the same issues you have by being on a board or committee. You don't have the media law issues to deal with. You don't have a conflict of interest stuff to deal with. You can participate. You have a tremendous amount of flexibility and freedom. So I look at the Municipal Technology Committee, and the only thing they didn't describe in there is the shape of the table they were going to meet at. It's crazy to define how you're going to remove somebody. So I think the town needs to decide, hey, number one, do we want members of committees to be voters? Maybe yes, maybe no. Do we want people to be residents? Maybe yes, maybe no. And we should define once and for all what a quorum is. I think anytime we start defining quorum for one committee, you're playing with fire. I just think they're going down the wrong path here. And again, I have great respect to Catherine. I've told her that. The select board voted 3-2 to create that committee. Lisa Braccio and Chelsea Malinowski voted against it. And let's see what the voters say at town meeting.
They voted 3-2 to create the standing committee?
No, to create the associate positions on the ad hoc committee. So it was a split vote on that, 3-2. And I suspect that the vote on support of this article will probably go down the same lines. So I just think anytime you create associate positions, you're in a world of trouble. Hey, and if I could just segue to a second, there was a comment made about the term of alternates and associates. It's interesting because the Zoning Board of Appeals is created by Chapter 40A, Section 12. And in that, they refer to associate members. However, in the town bylaw, section 174, because of an amendment that was made in the 2018 special town meeting, they use the term or alternates. The proper term should be associate members. All right. So just, it's one of those, does it really matter? I mean, I always call ZBA people alternates, but the legal name for them is associates. So I just.
So Jim, is there any other committee that exists today that has, besides ZBA, have associate or alternate members?
They do not. And again, the key thing to keep in mind with ZBA is those people, there's a particular reason why they're there. If somebody has a conflict or cannot participate, that person is essentially promoted to a full voting member to fulfill the quorum requirements of the board.
Per state law.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, this is just take a step back. This is so what Catherine's words at one of the meetings, so they could give recognition to two people that are putting their name on the website. I just, if the town,
she's here. She's going to talk. She's got her hand up, so she's going to talk in a second. But she didn't say that when we talked to her. She basically said, we got a lot of work to do. We really have to roll up our sleeves, and it gives people a chance to help us roll up our sleeves and actually get out and do the work.
Kathy, that is the exact language she used at the Board of Selectmen meeting the first time up. That was that. So none of us have the document in front of us to take a look at, and I urge you before you take a vote on this to read whatever the final document is.
No, we have it. We just haven't read it all. So we've got it, but we haven't read it, as far as I know. Okay, so you're saying, Jim, that your plan is to go to the select board after town meeting and basically try to, in one fell swoop, clean all this up. So there's uniformity as far as this goes. We don't have to look to each committee's charge and bylaw to find out what its quorum is and who gets to vote and who gets to sit on it. You're going to try to make it as uniform as possible.
Yes, and whatever the whole votes, however they want that to come down.
And then if you do that, several bylaws will have to be changed because there are bylaws that will then conflict with that.
Yes. Yep. And I tried to put an article through that would supersede the other bylaws, and the problem is town council cannot advise me on language that I would bring into that because I'm not the town administrator or a member of the select board. So he can't provide guidance on something like that. In fact, he even told me at town meeting he wouldn't do that. So I looked, the reason I pulled the article is I thought there'd just be frustration with the voters and I didn't want to waste everybody's time. So let's do this, the slow walk with the select board and just to clean everything up. There's so many different boards here that will define who votes, who doesn't. In one place only, let's just say ex officios don't vote. I mean, just let's keep it simple. I've talked to several of you on other things, and the common thing I hear from most appointed people that I hear to voting committees is how frustrated they are with the different rules here and the red tape. And I just want to make it clean so that it's easy for people to see and everybody understands whatever the hall wants. I'm just trying to make it simple.
Yeah, Jim, I was looking at it today actually, and I was confused by some are registered voters, some just say voters of the town, and I was trying to find a definition of what a voter was, and there isn't.
Yeah.
So then I default to Black's Law Dictionary or whatever legal counsel would say, and it would just be a voter or somebody who votes.
Yeah.
I voted on American Idol, therefore there's a voter in the town, right? So I think to your point, there's some ambiguity in some of the language that needs to be cleaned up.
See, everybody, you probably thought this article was simple, right?
Well, Kathy, one thing that I did pick up on, but I hadn't really dug into, and I just noticed it in the bylaw, is they shall maintain trails on public property, monitor, create, enhance. So are we envisioning transferring budget out of the DPW for the trails maintenance to the trails committee if they're responsible? I don't know how they're going to do their duty without the budget to do it.
As far as I know, that hasn't been discussed. Where's Kath? She's got her hand. Let's let Catherine weigh in at this point.
Thank you. So a couple things I just want to clear up, that we did circulate an updated bylaw. So,
Catherine, you're very staticky. We can hear you, but it's rough.
okay, is that any better? Shoot, this is really bad. I don't know what I should do. Should I try to call in? Is there a phone number?
Yes, you can always call in. So are you at your house on your home computer?
Yeah, I haven't moved. I'm in the same situation we were in before.
You could try killing your video. Sometimes that improves the
Yeah,
signal.
but Catherine, if you go above the mute button in the bottom corner, there's a little caret. You can always say switch to phone audio.
Is this any better? I turned off my video.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just getting, this is really important. I need to attend and I need to respond. So I need to.
I know. So do what Andrew says. Do the caret for the phone.
I'm sorry. I don't exactly understand.
So in the bottom corner, there's a mute button.
Yes, I see it.
There's a little caret next to it, a little arrow. If you click on that, there should be a button, an option called switch to phone audio.
Yes. Okay, great.
Jim, while I have you here, I had one question we were thinking about on Northborough, Southborough regional. With the new bylaw that we can obviously, have town meeting at Algonquin, could we ever have a joint town meeting? Like if we were like a special town meeting to vote on Algonquin things? Sorry.
You're just getting radical now, Andrew.
Sorry, Jim, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can.
Sorry, I've never heard of that happening. It's a very interesting question. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, or even if it was like, imagine we were on the football field and they were on one half and we were on the other half, and that was the bounds of the hall. It was just an interesting thought.
It is. It's funny how different towns. I've attended 8 other town meetings just to see how people run it, and it's amazing how different they are. In some towns, they have secret ballots, and Hull has 5 or 6 at every town meeting. A couple of years ago, somebody wanted to mention one of those, and they almost booed them out of the hall. But some towns, the clerks actually produce ballots that you just mark yes or no, and you come up and you put your ballot in a voting machine like you'd use at elections. So it's kind of interesting. If you were to hold a joint meeting like that, I was trying to think of a way that you could separate voting. Have all the people in the same piece of it. I guess you could. It's an interesting question. I'm going to follow up on that. That's interesting. Kind of a
Yeah, I
novel
was thinking,
question.
like, imagine it's like half the room is one, half the room is the other, with a tape in between. This side holds up their card, that side holds up their card. Okay, we just voted at the same time. We're good, right?
Yeah, I'll follow up and get back to you. Interesting.
Thank you.
All right. So I don't think Catherine has called. So Catherine, can you hear us? I don't see her phone.
I see your phone connected, but it's on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Much better.
Okay, great. Thank you for your patience there. So sorry. That was like the worst timing, right?
Always happens.
I know, right? So, Jim, I did submit the most updated version of the bylaw earlier this week, so I'm not sure what the protocol is to getting that to you. But I wanted everyone to know that in the beginning, we understood that Mr. Hegarty was going to have some issues with this. So we invited him to help us draft and attend to the bylaw to ensure that we were meeting the concerns. But Mr. Hegarty, confirmed that he's on different sides of this, so was not interested in participating in that process. So that, put us in a bit of a bind, because we were looking for his expertise, because obviously he knows a lot more about this type of stuff. So we did the best we could. And then the issue with the quorum has been resolved. Mr. Hegarty, we actually took your Article 27 and looked at how you were trying to standardize the bylaws, which we are in full support of. I work as a senior director, and I work a lot in administration and contracts, so I understand the rhyme and reason to doing that. So we took your bylaw and made sure that we mimicked it, your recommendations based on the quorum. So now the quorum matches what you had. We also removed the language about removing members of the committee we thought that was fine, a recommendation. And so we tried to standardize it in that case. We also took out some other language that may have overcomplicated the bylaw in an effort to, simplify things and make sure it's clear. To speak to actually what the bylaw reads as far as function matches our current charter. So our current charter says we are to maintain trails in town, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been doing that without a budget, and it's been working. DPW will step in and do, if there's tree work and things like that, they've been handling that. And then, like I said, recreation has been very helpful on the promotion and membership and other things that we've needed, conference attendance and stuff like that. So that's just that. The other thing is a lot of what was said tonight minimizes everything that we're actually trying to do. This isn't about appreciating two members. This isn't about, trying to go against the grain. Other towns have used associate members in this capacity, and we've spoken to 3 of them, and they used committees on the town forest committee, for example, for the same reason, extra hands, really helpful to have. We've tried to do this the right way. We've gone all the way through, general counsel. He's said, he appreciates the use of associate members. It's not creating an issue for that. I think I can't remember exactly all the issues that were brought up, but the example of EDC, what if they want associate members? Well, they have a bylaw, for example, so they'd have to go to town meeting and they would have to go through the vote process. So I understand the concern, but we're the Trails Committee. We don't have a $40,000 budget. We're not, promoting development, and we're not promoting controversial development for that reason. So we've also listened to the stakeholders. We've been in touch with a lot of different committees, commissions, and boards, and specifically Southborough Open Land Foundation, and the Stewardship Committee. So a couple concerns was, it's not specific enough to, keep you on your lane, in the trails that are your trails. So we added language to the, beginning of it to make sure that we're responsible for trails in town that we have licenses for. So we've really been through multiple iterations and a couple of general counsel reviews to get this right, and had invited, people who had concerns to help us draft this. So in good faith, we have done our due diligence, as we understand it, to put forth a good bylaw. As far as whether it should be a bylaw, I'm not even going to speak to that because it is what it is. An ad hoc committee is, the definition is to form a specific, purpose, and then it's dissolved typically. So, we're not, again, asking for anything else other than what we currently are, and just moving into a standing committee. And then for all the good reasons that we had mentioned before. So we're trying to be really transparent about everything. We've asked for guidance from Mr. Purple. We've asked for guidance from the general counsel. We're really trying to do the right thing here. Other towns are using it. They don't think it's a bad idea. So I'll stop there, and happy to answer any questions. But I really, and Mr. Hegarty, after this meeting, I'm happy to send you a version of that bylaw so that you can see the changes that we made that are consistent with some of the suggestions that you made. Thank you.
Jim, you want to respond?
Couple of things. I appreciate a comment, and I'd love to read it. You don't have to be a standing committee to have a budget. So that doesn't matter. That's not a reason to do it. And Catherine's comment that this isn't about just 2 members. Well, it is, because the bylaw they're bringing forward is only going to allow 2 people to be members, associate members. So if you wanted to make this inclusive, change that up to 20. That's exactly what this is, 2 people, and that's the comment was made at the Board of Selectmen's meeting early on. And my comment about EDC was to give an example when there was a lot of distrust about EDC and motivation and what have you. I don't think anybody, including the select board, should have the right to create associate members. And I think it's going down a rabbit hole that we don't have. We have, 40 some odd ad hoc committees that function properly and it works. And I think you lose a lot of flexibility by being a standing committee, and I just don't see it. And if you truly want to make this inclusive and help have a lot of people help you on the trails and make them associate members, then don't just make it 2 people. Make it 20 or make it unlimited. If that's what you're looking to do, to me that would make more sense. But the way this is written, it's written for the two people, and that's the way it is. In my humble opinion.
And I just looked at the current bylaw or ad hoc committee charge versus the new one. It's omitting the overseeing volunteers. So this one says the duty of the committee shall be to create, enhance, extend, monitor, and maintain trails on public property within the town. And the other one is the Southborough Trails Committee is charged with overseeing volunteers to create, monitor, maintain, and improve the trails, which I think is an important distinction.
Is she still here?
Yep, she's there.
Okay, go ahead, Catherine.
Okay, I was just waiting to be called on. I just want a point of clarification. We don't have the non-voting, the associate members are not limited to do in this. It's specifically, we were told and guided to not limit it. We did, initially put forth having just a couple so that the town would feel more comfortable, because we're not trying to blow up to a committee of 20. We really just want the flexibility to allow other residents who might want to participate to do so if they can't do so on a full-time basis. And, creating a 501c is not in the cards for us. We're very busy. We don't have time for that. So I get the recommendation. A lot of the work we do ourselves. So we do organize work parties, but, as a committee who does manual labor outside of monthly meetings, this makes sense for us. So I'm gonna, stand with that and let the voters take, give us their feedback and vote for it if it makes it that far. But yeah, so, and I think the concern the select board had with the split vote really had to do with the two concerns were it sets precedent and open meeting law. And the open meeting law we've run to ground is not an issue. We've created a member policy. It goes across the board. And as I understand with the open meeting law, and Jim, you know much more about this, but a public body, if you're appointed to it, you're required to go through the open meeting law training and the conflict of interest training. So it doesn't, in the open meeting law text, as I was reviewing it, and please correct me, it doesn't say that you have to be a voting member to go through that. It says if you're a member of a public body. So I was wondering if that might actually help us understand that a little bit more. But again, we put a member policy. It was reviewed by general counsel, and we did that for the reasons of the concerns that were brought forward. Because, like I said, we're not trying to bring anything bad for the town. We just want a couple of extra members. This works for other committees. This works for other towns. And I think if I quote Mark Purple, nothing in municipal government is original. It's all recreation of another's wheel, So that's essentially what we're doing. Thank you.
So Catherine, what's the second reason the two voted against it for the select board? What was the other reason?
One was setting a precedent. So if you do it, then every other board, commission, and committee might come through. And the guardrails for that's up to the select board. So the select board has some control over what ad hoc committees, ask for this. So they can obviously say yay or nay in certain cases. And then the other one was it's a slippery slope with the open meeting law. And so I didn't really understand how that applied. So we, went forward and put forth the policy just to ensure that everyone on the committee knows that they need to abide by that policy. And we are lucky in that both members on the committee, associate members, are currently on other committees. So regardless of whether, this is an anomaly, it won't always be the case, but these two people already have town email, so it's not an additional expense in just this instance. And there also would be voting members on other committees, so they would have already have to follow the open meeting law. So there's a double protection there in this one instance. Doesn't mean it's going to apply for each one.
And they're still appointed by the select board, so that's the safety net, right? I mean, I don't think the select board is going to approve, 600 associate members.
Yeah, and we don't want to manage 600, and so we're comfortable with.
This is so. Andrew's right. This is still going to be a select board appointed committee.
But both the voting and the associates.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. All right. So I think we've probably gone as far as we should go with this one tonight. I'm glad we heard from both. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, but I think Kathy, my question on the two volunteers, it changes the scope pretty significant, right?
Can you clarify, Andrew?
Sure.
What's
Let me just
can
share my
you
screen real
clarify what
quick.
you mean? Thank you.
So this was what I was reading. Southborough Trails Committee is charged with overseeing volunteers to create, monitor, maintain, and improve the trails.
Yep.
Right. And then the current draft is it loses the oversee volunteers. Right, which makes sense. I think the Trails Committee, you get volunteers, they go do the trails cleanup, that makes sense. But if I read this, I would think that the other work done to maintain the trails that's not done by volunteers, that's done by either the town's landscaping contractor or the DPW would now fall into your purview. That makes sense?
I don't know if it actually makes sense. So the bylaw does say that we can enlist volunteers to, so it does include that. So your concern is that the bylaw is going to give us more authority to maintain the trails than it currently does by the way it's written.
Yeah, it's going to transfer, well, not even necessarily authority, it's responsibility. Right?
But I don't, yeah.
The town is voting, right? Because it's a bylaw. The town meeting is voting that you are now responsible in maintaining all the trails, not DPW.
But we are now anyway. Like we are responsible for maintaining them now anyway, and we do that through recreation and through DPW. So I don't know how does that shift the responsibility. Like, and that's an honest question, not a snarky like pushback. I'm just literally looking.
Yeah, I mean, if I was Karen, I would say, great. I'm just going to take whatever it is, $20,000 out of my budget. Or $20,000, and I'm going to spend it on other, the fields because I don't have to worry about the trails anymore. That's now Trails Committee's problem.
So is there clarifying language that you would recommend that we put in the bylaw to ensure that, DPW still does the beautiful work they do, which they contract the mowers to do the mowing and they help with tree work on occasion and things like that. So
yeah, I think
having this stated preclude them from doing that?
Yeah, I think it just, instead of shall, it would be like maybe partner with other town departments to create, enhance, extend, monitor, and maintain the trails.
Mm-hmm.
Like oversee and partner, or something along those language to make it more collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly think that's within your scope to do all those things. It's just like the duty shall be to, like, it's very definitive.
Yeah.
And
well, right, and I understand the difference between shall and may. The only problem I have is we've kind of been shut off from changing the language. So how important
you can still
is
make
this?
changes. You can still make changes. We can make changes on town meeting floor if we need to. But
well,
Kathy,
I'm trying to avoid that because that's gonna be tricky.
This
So,
isn't going to the printer until probably the
9th
8th of April or 9th of April. So
mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, I think those are pretty small changes. That I just that's one of those I could see getting hung up on town meeting floor on the duty is shall versus may, or collaborative, and who really owns it. And I just don't want you to, I think you're so close. I don't want you to get tripped up over that.
Yeah, no,
I don't know if I agree.
Really
having responsibility doesn't mean you have to do it yourself. It just means you make sure it gets done. And so they delegate it, to DPW. So I'm not as hung up on that as you are. I'm much more concerned about the differences between Catherine and Jim. I mean, those are pretty big differences as far as where this is going. So I don't know, Jim, who else thinks the way you do as far as this goes. So we've got to talk about this one. So anybody else want to ask any of the questions of either Jim or Catherine before we get to Jim's budgets as far as the trails article? Jim has, and just to be clear, Jim has withdrawn his article. So the changes he's proposing that he would like to see made that would make things much more consistent and not have to look at every single bylaw as far as the rules go. He's withdrawn that. He's going to bring it back later, but it's not on this article. It's not on this warrant anymore. So those changes won't be made with this meeting. Okay, so I don't see anybody else wanting to ask questions of either one of you. Catherine, your hand's up again.
No, I just never left it. I never took it down.
So thank you for hanging in with us. This has been interesting to hear both of your points of view. So we will be back to you.
Okay. And I'm available for any questions and certainly open to how to make this better. And we appreciate your support if it ends up that way. And thank you for your comments, Mr. Hegarty. Good night.
Tom
Thanks,
Brady. Tom Brady. So good night, Catherine.
Thank you for that.
She's gonna retire and come back.
Don't forget that, Tom Brady. Pretty high praise here. Okay, good night,
All right,
Catherine.
bye.
So Jim's gonna stay with us because we want to talk about his budgets. Okay. All right, so Jim basically oversees two budgets. One is the budget for him, the elected town clerk budget, which is literally just Jim. That's literally his salary. And he's proposing that just goes up by the 3%. So that's one thing. The second one is the town clerk department budget that he also oversees, which is his employees and then the cost of running elections, running his office, etc. So does anybody have any questions on the actual town clerk salary before we go to his department budget? So his salary would be $92,856. Okay, so now this is a department budget. This
The
one,
electic's down the bottom.
there it is, sorry. Okay, so there's that one. So I'm assuming everybody's okay with that one. That's just the normal year-over-year COLA increase.
And Jim, this is the latest one, right? This is the right numbers. There was a few in there. I just want to make sure.
That's the one I've got.
All right.
Okay, all right, so on to the actual Department 161. So it's a big year-over-year increase, which Jim is going to explain. Why?
And Jim, you're on mute again. No.
No.
Oh,
No.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay. There are two main driving things here. We have two elections this year that we did not have last year. We'll have a state election in primary in September the 6th and a state election in November. The state primary election increases our cost by $9,500, and the state the state election will increase our cost by $9,200. Then we're going to have 14 days of in-person early voting both for the primary and for the election. Between the two of those, that's $23,500. We budgeted for a special town meeting in the fall. That's going to be just under $6,000. Your 3% SAP raises is $2,800. I have some money to put data in the cloud is $1,000. And there's just a few other things, increased postage costs, excuse me, miles for training, and extra training for the wardens on early voting and rule changes. But the biggest thing that's driving the bus here is the auditor files a bill every year to reimburse towns for unfunded mandates. So because we're required by the legislation that's going to be passed shortly to have these 14 days of in-person early votings for both of these, the state will reimburse us for most of those costs. So what's happened in prior years is that money came directly back to my account. So I didn't budget it and I got the reimbursement, it offset the overage. Sometimes there were issues where it came back in the next fiscal year, just a timing issue. But the state has changed their accounting rules. And they said that even though they're going to give us this reimbursement, it can't be applied to the clerk's budget. It has to go into general funds. It makes no sense to me. And once upon a time, I was an accountant. I mean, they forgot about that little thing called a matching principle. So the reimbursements that were coming in for the $25,000, give or take, for the early voting stuff, in a typical year, you wouldn't see that in my budget. But you're seeing that I have had to increase my budget by $25,000 for the cost of the 2 14-day periods of in-person early voting, and that money will come back to the general fund. They're also taking a
Specifically, it's going to go into local revenue.
Yep, and there's another $2,000 we get back every year for opening up early on election days. Same kind of a deal. So it's an accounting change is really driving the bus.
Okay, so just to be clear, the number that's going to come back to the town is 2021 or 23?
It all depends. It should be 23, but unfortunately, it's a function of how much money the auditor asks for. When we had in-person early voting before the 2020 presidential election, they didn't ask for enough money, and we sent them incredible amounts of detail. And frankly, they finally got frustrated, and they gave every city and town in Massachusetts, like so much per person who voted, just because they didn't want to have to deal with the detail.
Okay, so but you think your best number right now is 23?
Yes. So it's the accounting change 23 and the other big issues is the 2 elections we don't have. Now, if you could explain to me why we want to have 14 days of in-person early voting over Labor Day weekend in Southborough, will there be tumbleweeds blowing down the street? But that's what the law requires us to do. So, and just an aside, we're planning to hold these the early voting for the September election at the senior center as we did last year, a couple of years ago. But we're planning to hold the in-person early voting for the fall election at a rental property on Route 9 because it would disrupt the senior center, their programs too much. So Mr. DePietri has offered to rent property to us for $500 a week, but he's asked that the payment actually be made to an educational foundation rather than him receiving the payment directly. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. So that's really, those are the big issues driving it, and it really runs all across all these boards.
Interesting. So he wants you to make a charitable contribution. Okay, why aren't you doing it at the townhouse like you have in the past?
Because of COVID issues right now, we may be able to do that. I actually talked to Chelsea Malinowski the other day. We're going to cross that bridge come July. I wouldn't be comfortable doing it right now. We still see people coming in here with masks. And for the 2016, I believe it was 2016 when we used the front hall for November election, we had booths set up so we could have 16 people voting at one time. And I just don't think in this environment, people would be comfortable doing that. So we're going to have to cross that. If we, I would love to do it. It makes my life a ton easier. When we have voted ballots any place other than this building, we have to wait for police officers to transport them. And every day we're at the senior center, we don't know what the officers, if they're on call or if they're on a call. Sometimes we got to wait more than an hour for them to bring it back. It would be much more convenient for us to do it here, and it would actually save us some money as well. So if I can do that, I'm going to jump all over that.
There could be some significant work going on at the senior center soon. So make sure that, you understand the timing of that too, so it doesn't mess you up as far as where you're going to have it. It could be.
Kathy, did we have I think I remember this, the reimbursement thing. Did we do a reserve fund or a interdepartmental transfer at the end of last year for this?
Not last year. We did one before because it was a timing issue. The money came back in the different fiscal year.
Okay.
And the reason you don't see, the reason he's saying the planned special is in this budget, it wasn't in last year's budget, is because it wasn't there. So we did have a special, but it wasn't budgeted.
And one of the reasons that much money is that we have to pay the vendor who updates our town code to update the town code. And it's almost $3,000 every time we do that. So, that's why it's going to be so expensive to hold a fall town meeting.
Interesting. So every time we have a meeting, special or regular, and we're going to change a code, we've got to update it. That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's another cost. Okay. Anybody have any questions to Jim on his department proposed fiscal year 23 budget as far as the large increase?
Jim, I don't know necessarily whatever happened with the Iron Mountain, or I think you were converting a space into document storage, or you were working on something on that. I was just curious about that part.
Yes.
There you go. Okay.
Recognize the signatures down there?
Yeah, John Hancock.
And Sam Adams.
There you go.
Pretty cool. So actually, I'm on my way to pick up these documents up at the Conservation Center in Andover, and then they'll be brought over to Iron Mountain. So we haven't brought the stuff over there yet, but it'll all be moving over here in the next week or so. That's a really cool document. If you want, I'll send you a picture of it. We're gonna have some neat pictures made up. It's from 1783, and it actually has to do with it was when Hancock was the governor and Adams was the president of the Senate, and it was an appeal of people being double taxed so many things as residents of Marlborough and Southborough. So it's interesting that the oldest document we have from John Hancock here was about overpayment of taxes. And it's in incredible shape. And a resident in town who's a terrific photographer came in and made some really nice pictures for us. But that stuff will all be going over there.
So you still don't have use of that space below the stairs?
No, nothing. nothing has moved on that. And nothing.
Okay, all right, so that's a done deal. Okay, so Marcy, anything for Jim?
I don't have any questions tonight, Mr. Haggerty. Thank you.
Adam, as
Good.
far as budget goes, we're going to talk about some other things in a second, but as far as budget goes, Adam,
Nope, I'm good.
Timothy,
I'm good.
Eric.
I'm good, thank you.
All right, did I hit Adam? Did I hit you?
Yep, still no questions.
Okay, good. I'm glad I asked again. Okay, Tom, did I ask you?
Now, are you a Patriots fan, Jim? I wasn't sure. I'm kidding.
Yes, I am.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No, and listen, honest to God, I think the world of Catherine. I have great respect for what she's accomplished and her motivation and her drive. I think the world of her. I really do. We just, on this one, we're on opposite sides of the street. Simple as that.
Healthy disagreements, nothing wrong with that. Nothing with that. Okay, so Jim, thanks for the budget stuff. Now you want to talk about what your plan is as far as voting going forward?
Yes. Like I said, I've gone to 8 other towns and seen how they operate, and I've seen clickers used at voting, and frankly, I didn't like them. I didn't like the ones that we used at Westboro, and I've seen some others, and I recently came across a product that I like a lot, and it's pretty small. I mean, I've got an external drive here. It's a little bit bigger than this, comes in a lanyard, and it's used by the House of Representatives of DC, and I like it a lot. And at the end, first of all, we don't need a bylaw to use these at town meeting, but the moderator has complete discretion as to whether, even if we passed a bylaw to allow the use of the town meeting, the moderator could still say no. It's entirely the moderator's decision. So I'm going to bring an article forward at the special town meeting in the fall to have the voters discuss and decide whether they would want to allow these to be used at town meeting. The reason that I would like to see these used is that it's a lot faster than hand counts, and it's more accurate than people counting. It absolutely positively is. So I think that we would save 30 to 45 minutes per meeting by using these clickers. And I got to tell you, that vote on St. Mark's, it passed by 1 vote, and there were 2 times that I had to call the tellers up just to ask about a stray mark and can I see it? And actually, I was thinking about advisory. I think my first year as the clerk here, when we were back in the trot year, there was a vote that was very close, and advisory was on the losing side of the article. But I remember walking up on the stage, and some of the members of advisory said, "We're not sure that they counted our vote." And I said, "Well, stand up. If 7 of you stand up before the next article is called, you say, I question the vote, and then the moderator has to do a hand count." But it wasn't done on time, and there you go. So I think it adds those 2 issues. It's more accurate and it's faster. And the way this device works, it sends an encrypted radio signal. There's no internet involved whatsoever. And you have 2 options. You have a green button says 1 yes, and it's a red button 2 says no. You have a little small window on the screen, and when you press say 1, about a half a second later, once your vote is counted on the computer, you get a response back that says okay. And if you change your mind in the window that the moderator allows for voting, you press 2, it cancels that vote and it comes right back into it. And these votes would be displayed on the screen. You could either display them while people are counting or at the end. So it's up to the voters. It's interesting. I've heard some feedback from people on this on both sides of the issue. Some people, I thought that the pushback would be the money, $18,600 for 600 of these, which last about 10 years. I haven't heard a soul talk about that, which surprised me, to tell you the truth. But I've heard people say they're all in favor of this because they don't want someone to know how they voted. But I've heard other people say, no, everybody should have to stand up and be counted. And I've heard people say, maybe they're not comfortable with technology issues, and they know that, Mary Smith is, so they respect Mary's opinion. So when Mary votes some way on a technology issue, they want to vote that way. So we'll wait and see what the voters say on it. But I think the pluses that I see, it's faster and more accurate. So there's an interesting wrinkle to these devices. When they come from when they're programmed by the manufacturer, they're numbered by default to be numbered 1 to 600. Now you could get up to 10,000 of these things. Well, it turns out we've had, in the past 20 years, we had the largest 3 town meetings we've had. One was 1,500 and change held at EMC when the town was deciding to split away from Algonquin and build a South Grove school. Then the second largest was 753, I think. That was to build a public safety building and get the golf course. And the next one was 500 and change, and that was for the Burnett House. Absent those three, you're talking 300 and change. So I wanted to buy 600 of these. But there's a wrinkle to these. The town of Westwood just bought 2,000 of these. So, and their numbers, theirs are numbered 1 through 2,000. So I asked the vendor, I said, all right, let's take this worst case scenario. What if somebody borrowed, stole, whatever, took number 27 from Westwood and came out here? Would our device recognize it? And could they vote? Yeah. So I said to the company, I said, all right, why do I have to start at 1? What if I start ours at 8,001? So our numbers would be 8,000 to 8,599. He said, of course you could. Great. Nobody has 8,000 anywhere in the world on these things. But the advantage of that is that if we had a big town meeting coming up and we were afraid we're going to have more than 600, we could borrow them from another town. We could borrow, the 1 to 400, say from Westwood or one of the other towns that have these. And we can program the machine to accept votes 1 to 400 and 8,600 and so forth up that. So it's kind of an interesting wrinkle. I've thought about ways to protect the anonymity of the voting, and the vendors told me that no one has ever thought about this, but I don't want to know how you vote in this system. I don't want to be able to track to say that Jim Hegarty got 27 and he voted yes on this article. I don't want to be involved in that. So what we'd simply do is, but we need to know that Hegarty got 27 just in case number 27 isn't turned in at the end of the night. So we use these iPads to check people in, and we have a printer for every one of the iPads. It generates a receipt, says Jim Hegarty checked in at 7 o'clock. Anyway, what we would do is we give him a wristband as well. We would literally write on the wristband 27 and write 27 on a slip of paper, and we'd drop that in a bag, in a box. And we'd give all those to the police officer. The police officer has them, and at the end of the night, if 27 is missing, the officer opens up the box, finds 27, and knocks on Hegarty's door. Simple as that. But that ensures that when I'm up front with my computer I know that 27 voted, I have no idea who 27 is. So to me, it's a very simple way for me to have anonymity. But it's going to come down, the voters may be all over it. The voters may think that they prefer to have people standing up and being counted. We'll wait and see. But again, even if the hall were to vote in favor of this in the fall, it's up to the moderator to do this. So let's assume that this passed overwhelmingly in the fall. Then what I would do is next spring, I would lease these for one meeting for $5,500. And so the hall would basically get a trial run. And if it worked well and people wanted to buy them, the vendor would apply that against the purchase price. And they've never had somebody turn them down. And I've reached out to all 25 city town clerks that use this particular vendor right now. There's another 12 that are buying right now. And there's only one that didn't have a positive comment. And I happen to know this clerk. And I know for a fact that she uses a typewriter in her office every day. So I kind of discount the technology issues they had there. If any of you would like to come, I'm going to invite the moderator or anybody else. I have a list of where this vendor will be testing these and showing them at other town meetings in the next couple of months. The other competing companies, I get bids from 3 companies. One of them was just crazy. And a device that's comparable in price. They have 11 buttons on their clicker. It looks like my remote TV at home. I want a simple button. Turn it on, do the volume. Simple works. If it's not simple, people aren't going to like it. So.
Okay, so your plan is to do it at special, and then if it passes, to also propose a special, a change in your budget, or just to try to do a reserve fund transfer?
Well, the ARPA committee, I hope, in the board.
Okay, yeah, ARPA. Okay, ARPA. Tim?
Yeah, I've asked for ARPA money, and I've gone to capital supports this, and I've spoken individually with all 5 members of the select board, and they're supportive of this. They haven't taken a vote, so I expect this could be used for ARPA money moving forward. But
I think Semino is going to support it as long as the town supports it. That's what I think.
I don't want to speak for Paul, but he wanted this to be in a warrant article so the public could be given notice and they could debate it at the town meeting.
All right, so you're doing what he wants.
Yeah, and then we'll just see, honestly, if the vote was 60-40, I wouldn't go forward on this, in the fall. It was something like that. But, and I've talked to people in other towns that use these, and they're pretty enthusiastic about it, so.
So when the St. Mark's bell tower article came up, I was one of the tellers that had to count the votes, because it was, when it's close, you have to go out and literally count them if you can't tell it by eyesight. And so there was a voter that tried to vote twice with me. So.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. I'd forgotten to mention that. one of the downsides, people said, well, how do you ensure that if Mr. and Mrs. Smith are there and Mr. Smith leaves, that Mrs. Smith doesn't have both? You know, it's interesting because about 5 years ago, I saw a picture in a local newspaper from Weston or Wayland, one of those towns, of somebody doing just that. I think the lady might have had 3. So here's what we would do. That little wristband we give to you, we write number 27 on it, and the wristband color tells me you're a registered voter. So if you go to leave the hall, we want your clicker. If you go to the restroom, turn it in, we'll give it right back to you. But you're not leaving until we get the clicker. So that would be our way to try to enforce it. Can I say that's 100% foolproof? No, I can't. But I think that it's a pretty good effort to try to make this as accurate as possible.
All right, I just want everybody to know this is on the list for the fall. Anybody have any quick questions? It's 10.
It seems kind of risky, Jim. This is Tim. Hi. What happens if you have a 602 people who show up to the town meeting? Now you can't use the system.
Oh, no, for sure. I borrow them from one of the other towns. And honestly, you know, Tim, they used to laugh at me in the FBI that I had backup batteries for my backups and spares for my spares. All right. I have, if you could see how many extra external hard drives I have for backups for here, you'd kind of cringe. We would absolutely positively, if there's anything out of the ordinary, I would borrow another 500 or 600 from another town. And we could absolutely do that. That is my least of my worries. But it's funny you mention that because there was a town that happened. And I asked them, how did you address that? And they said very simply, when the people came in and they ran out of clickers, they asked those people to sit in a certain area and they counted their votes by hand. It's funny, but
so Tim, he's going to buy twice the average attendance up front. And then if we know there's going to be something that is going to draw people, like, for example, if the NERI project were to ever go forward, that's going to draw people. So he'll know that there's something on the warrant that is going to be more interesting than usual. He would arrange to borrow.
And because we can number ours in such an unusual fashion, we're a very attractive partner for the other towns. You know, the other towns that all got 1 through whatever, they can't share. And I've already talked to 2 clerks that said, if we get these, they'll work with us to make it work, to share it.
Okay.
Okay. Anything
What
else?
what about security concerns?
Security in terms of physical security or in terms of the device itself?
In terms of hacking the signal.
It's not. It's a radio signal. It doesn't touch the internet at all. In fact, I specifically would go to this system because it does not touch the internet at all. It's an encrypted radio signal. And like I say, this is used, the same system, the exact same clickers are used by the House of Representatives DC.
All right, so it is encrypted. It is encrypted.
Yes, yes. Okay. And, you know, I'll give all that to the MTC and Matt Probst. He's very supportive of this. Yeah.
Okay.
We also have, there's also this package I ordered, backup radio antennas and receivers on this, just in case somebody trips on a cable or whatever, just, you know.
And if worse comes to worse, if it fails for some reason, you just go to you raise your hands, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, one thing the moderator could do is he could have some issues traditional way. And when there's a hand count, he might say, oh, pull your clicker on. You know, but that's entirely up to the moderator. So I don't want to speak for him.
Yep. Okay. All right.
But if anyone would like to see one of these in action, I'll be happy to take you to one of the towns, just, you know, curious to see what your opinions are.
Mr. Haggerty, this is Marcy. I am in full support of this. After the St. Mark's vote, I started looking at this a little bit on my own because I was very curious of how other towns managed very complex votes like that one that occurred. And I noticed that the town of Wayland has this type of system in place, and they have a very nice educational video for voters, as well as it looked like they had a subcommittee that worked on this a little bit. So I was happy to see that you were bringing this forward. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll reach out to the clerk in Wayland and take a look at that video. And it's a great idea moving forward. You know what has surprised me? I thought that some of our elderly population might not appreciate this. And that has really surprised me when I've talked to some folks. That frankly, some of them are afraid to drive at night, but they love the idea. So we'll see what happens. But I will follow up on that. Thank you.
They love the idea of the clicker, not driving at night.
Oh, the clicker. The clicker.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be serious. If you look at Congress, U.S. Congress, look at their average age, and they use it.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay. So Jim, last thing for you, as far as I know, is do you think you're going to have reserve fund transfer request for
Yeah.
fiscal year 22?
Yes, I just shot your meeting as the item began. You may need two $4,000 reserve transfers. One, I'm waiting for the invoice from the vendor for the update the code for the fall meeting. So I'm estimating that to be about $3,000 right now. And there's money, I had no money in my budget for the special town meeting in the fall. So the labor costs and the police costs that weren't picked up by the CARES Act, that's just under $4,000, including the general code piece of it. And I've been trying to estimate the costs for this annual town meeting in Algonquin. I'm meeting with the Lieutenant Newell from the police department next week to get his thoughts on how many police officers we need over there. We're certainly going to need more officers. Right now, I'm estimating it'll be about $4,000 for that as well, above budget. You know, one of the things to consider, we're going to have people going into two different entrances into the high school. You have a lot of people that maybe aren't familiar with the high school, plus people will be entering the parking lots at the same time that student athletes and their families are leaving from the parking lot, driving out. So we're going to need pretty good police presence to make sure that everything is safe for everybody coming in. And for banners, we spent an extra $700 and some odd dollars for banners. We're going to have, instead of our typical 4 or 5 banners around town, we have a lot of banners at Algonquin, but we have a total of 12 banners around Southborough instead of the typical 5 to alert people that we're going to be over at Algonquin. So
it sounds like 12,000 in total, something around there.
8,000 in total. And again, I'm estimating the audio video company. We're going to have them do the microphones.
Well, you said 4 for the special. You said 4 for the update of the bylaw. Then you said 4 for the annual at Algonquin.
Yeah, just 2 4s. 4 for the fall, which includes the bylaw, the town code.
Okay, all right.
Total of 4 and 2 of this. We're going to bring in the audio video company that helped us at our special town meeting to handle the microphones. Northborough hardwires every position, so each one of you would have a hardwired mic. Be 20 some odd mics. I think we're asking for disaster to have an open mics. So we're gonna bring this company in with an audio engineer to run 10 wireless mics and have them handle everything in the back. And I won't know until April 14, what their cost is. So I estimated $2,000 on that. So if that comes in less, we'll be better off. So, but again, I don't know the particulars, but all told between 2 of these right now, you're looking at about $8,000.
All right. And advisory's got a room reserved at 5 o'clock.
Yes. I won't know that until the week before, which room it's going to be.
Are we going to be on a stage or down in front of the stage?
In the orchestra pit in front. It's a big orchestra pit.
Okay.
It's probably 3 times the depth and the size of Trotter.
Okay. All right.
And we will be using the big board like we've done at Trotter in the past for projections and vote totals and so forth.
All right, so we'll reserve. We're keeping a running list of what reserve fund transfers we expect to see. We're not going to approve any of them till July, but we're keeping a running total. So we'll put 8 on there for you as a placeholder. Okay. And we can't hear you again.
Oh, I'm all set.
There you are. Okay. All right. So thank you. Interesting conversation tonight, as always. Anybody have anything else for Jim while he's here? All right. See you none. We will say good night.
All right. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. All right. So we almost finished the discussion on the budget, but there's one more thing too. And what Andrew or I will do tomorrow is we will put all this on the spreadsheet. We're going to have a column for what we think the select board is going to put in the warrant, and then we're going to have a column for where we may disagree, which is not going to be much, but it could be still the Board of Health. We got to put that one on there and decide that one for sure. So we'll get that out. And then next Wednesday, we will vote line by line on the budget. So we'll go through and see if anybody wants to hold a budget, and then we'll vote on everything else, and then we'll go back to those. So we can actually end the warrant as far as a recommendation. We can say, we can do it line by line. We don't have to vote. It's not a vote that we got to take for the overall budget. We can basically disagree with a line if that's what we choose to do. Okay. All right, so there's that. So let me just go over the schedule. So Tom, thank you for your email as far as what your schedule is. So we've got 3 meetings between now and town meeting. Town meeting is May 4th, which is also a Wednesday. We need to plan on starting at 5. It may be 5:30 depending on where we stand at the end, but at least count on 5 for now. So I know it's going to put a crimp in some of your schedules, but It starts at 6:30. Normally it starts at 7:30, or 7, but 6:30. So, and then you got to get there too. So 5 o'clock is where we've got our room set aside at Algonquin to finish any unfinished business, which is usually a few things. So we got 4/6. These are all Wednesdays, 4/6, 4/13, and 4/27. We're not going to meet the school vacation week. I know most of you don't have kids in school yet. Tim does. So we still try to honor that. So that's school vacation week. So we've got 3 more regular Wednesday night meetings at 7:30 before town meeting. So next week, we will vote on as much as we're ready to vote, but we will vote on the budget. I think we may be ready to vote on the capital planning committee article. I think we may be ready to vote on the noise bylaw one unless something changes drastically with what we saw. AP, you agree with that one?
Yeah, I think it has changed as we saw it last.
Significantly?
It's tough to say. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they made significant changes and they backed some of them out. So I'm
All
not
right, so
sure.
we'll get the changes and we'll talk about the changes. So we may have to hold that one too. As you heard tonight, we've got a lot to talk about. The trails one, as far as this, I mean, you heard 2 pretty good coherent arguments as far as the pro and con of that one. I don't know if the changes that have now been made to the regional capital stabilization article are going to influence you any differently. So we need to get our arms around those and make sure we understand those, because I didn't know it had changed until Jason told us tonight that it had. It's kind of strange that we weren't told about this, given they knew that we're the ones that are opposing this. But anyway, we'll get that straight. So we may not be voting on a whole lot next week besides the budget and besides the capital planning article and what I call the perfunctory admin articles, which will go on a consent agenda at town meeting for the most part. So we'll run through those real quick and make sure you understand them, but those are just routine things that have to go on there that don't have a whole lot of substance to them. So that's what we should be able to get out of the way next week. Then the 13th and the 27th, we'll finish the work on all of the non-money warrant articles. Okay. So anyone have an issue with that schedule? And does anyone know tonight whether they would miss any of those 3 meetings?
Yeah, Kathy, I will definitely miss on the 13th. And I should probably offline give you an update on some of my work commitments coming up, but any of those dates in April or early May are probably 50-50 for me. And I won't know.
Let me know as you know.
Yeah, I will know more concretely in the next week or 2, but right now each date that you rattled off there could be 50-50 for me.
Okay, anyone else know tonight that they can't make any of the 3 normal meetings in April?
The 13th is problematic on my end. I'll try to share that up. To be on the conservative side, I'd say I'm out, but I'm going to try to see if I can make some adjustments in my schedule.
So that's 2 out on the 13th. So 1 more and we're down to the exact quorum. So everybody just keep me posted as far as what's going on. Now, town meeting, I don't know what Tim thinks and what AP thinks, but I think it's going 2 nights. We don't have the auditorium for the 3rd night. So there's a plan to have a 3rd night down the road if they have to have it. But there's 4 citizens petitions articles now that have been basically added in large part as a response to the petitioners perceive disagreement with the way the St. Mark's Pocket Park and that road work associated with it has been done. And it's the type of articles that could just go on and on and on and on because of, I think, the issues people have. So I don't know how long they're the last ones, I will say that. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. People may be worn out by the end of it. If you lose a quorum, then the meeting ends. So we'll see what happens to those. We're going to talk about those on the 13th and 27th as far as what they mean. I mean, we're directly involved at one of them.
And Kathy, I forgot to ask Jim while he was here. The one on the recall has a lot of stuff for him to do, and it mentions his town clerk a lot. So I don't know if when we review that one, if he can join or if we can just get his opinion.
I think that would be a good one for him to join. This is not the first time that we've been asked to approve something like this. It failed, I think, Tim, I think it failed by a pretty large margin last time it came up. But again, it's a response to, for the most part, I think it's a response from Michael Weishand's issues with the select board as far as the reason he's been referred to the Ethics Commission. That kind of triggered it, and then kind of snowballed into the St. Mark's Pocket Park road work. So it's all kind of meshed together, but there's that one too. So we've got to understand them, and those four may be ones that we really don't take a position till we get to town meeting and see what happens, because there's no telling what's going to happen when people start trying to deal with those. Tim, you got any comment on any of those four?
I don't know. They just, I don't know.
I don't know.
It just seems like people want to have an argument during town meeting. None of them are going to produce anything productive.
No. Nope. I agree with you. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but we still got to address them. Okay, so then 5-4 and 5-5 town meeting. We don't have to have a quorum at town meeting to be at town meeting and participate, but hopefully everybody can come to that, because that's kind of our main role, is to be there for town meeting. So we're at the front with the select board. We will have a couple microphones on our table. They're going to have a couple on their table. The votes that we've taken will be shown on a screen above us, so people can see how we actually voted, what the vote was, not just support, not support. So, first time we've been back inside other than the special in 3 years. So it will be interesting. I will start the draft of the report that we need to basically hand out at town meeting. We'll publish it on the town website before. We'll send it to my Southborough, which we've done for a few years. So we can review it. We need at least one meeting. So I'll try to have it ready on the 13th. So we can start taking a look at it. I'll send it around to everybody. And then if you could have your comments, edits ready to be discussed on the 13th, that'd be great. Then we can finalize it on the 27th. AP, anything from you?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's all I've got. Anybody else have anything else before we see whether our public wants to say anything? Okay, so any public comment from Tim, or excuse me, from Kevin or Sam? All right, seeing none, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Adam one. Okay, roll call. Eric,
Aye.
AP,
Aye.
Marcy,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
and I'm aye. So 7-0, Claire. So be well, Claire. We'll talk tomorrow. Thank you.